There's so many rules in 40K, hundreds of events, and constant updates. Skip the learning curve of Warhammer and join the pros. Art of War is led by multiple world champions with decades of success. We teach clinics, stream games, and inspire you to succeed at your favorite hobby. Join our global community of gamers just like you.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a new exciting Tuesday. You know what that means, Jack?
Oh my god, is it a tier list?
It's Tier List Tuesday. Who doesn't love Tier List Tuesday? There's a couple things to rank today.
You know, my favorite time of the year, faction, the balanced data slate comes out, we get new points, all of that. The following Tuesday, there's still got to be a tier list.
That's true. We got a tier list. We got points to do. We got Arks of Omen rules to do. We got new detachment. We got no Armor of Contempt. The meta that we all loved and knew and probably are still playing at LVO. We're throwing that out the window for today, and we're building this tier list.
Let's build a tier list. Living in the new world, you know? We're not living in the past. We're living in 2027 now, Nick.
2027? I think it's 2023. It actually just turned 2023.
Oh, heck. Yeah, well, I'm in the future, all right? I see the past, present, and the future. I'm like a three-headed Fate Weaver.
It's like how Europe's meta is 6 months ahead, Jack's meta is 4 years ahead.
4 years ahead. You're going to be like, wow. This
Playing
all
11th edition.
You're like, oh, this all makes sense now.
All right, everybody. That's right. We're going to rank every army in the game down to all the different Space Marine chapters based on our first impressions of the new Arks of Omen GT pack, balanced data slate points, all of that stuff. Of course, this is our hot takes. These are relatively fresh off the press. A little bit of it's been tested, not all of it. There's a whole new world of Warhammer to explore, so take it all with a bit of grain of salt. But of course, we're going to be looking through it from the lens of competitive 40k, not the fluff, not the narrative, not the paint models and the coolness. Bonus points for coolness, bonus points for all that. But you know what? This is about best players taking the best list, maximum potential over here. Just trying to see what armies, if they're played optimally, can produce as results.
It is very difficult to try to figure out, like, oh, at mid-tier, people will probably mess this up, and so this army gets better, or at mid-tier, this army probably still performs. It's difficult. If you do your best with them, if the best players play them, then this is their potential is where we're going. Win rates, it's very easy to do. First off, there's no tournaments, really. I think there's been one or something.
This is all just our conjecture, really.
It's pretty easy to make a tier list off of win rates. Just rank them in order of the win rate and you're done, but that doesn't really tell you the whole story. Factions, for example, like Death Guard, have traditionally overperformed at mid-tables and been, completely dead at top tables because they have certain weaknesses that, maybe mid-tables are just not equipped to deal with or equipped to exploit, etc. Basically, this is if the best player got on this list, what could they do with it? Where's the cap?
Absolutely. So if you're new to this channel, we do a lot of competitive 40k based content. We have the War Room, which is our subscription service where we teach people how to get better at the game. You get access to some of the best players in the world, like Jack over here, myself, Richard Siegler, John Lennon, plenty of other Art of War coaches. We help you get better. There's an amazing Discord server. Now on this YouTube channel, we have 3 different tiers of membership, bronze, silver, and gold, so you can tailor how much content you actually want to watch and what specific factions you're into right here on this YouTube channel. So check it out. There's a link below. It's theartofwar40k.com/learn more. It also gives you a 50% discount code off your first month. The discount code is join our community. Type that in, become part of the process. And if you're still not sure, if I haven't sold you yet, you can get a 3-day free trial going on our website, theartofwar40k.com. So definitely, it's literally free. I have nothing else to say. Aside from please subscribe and like this video and leave a comment telling us how handsome we are. Our ability to produce this content literally depends on your support for our channel, and it means the world to us to keep doing this. So please and thank you. Click those buttons.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of support, let's lead us in with some super chats.
Super duper chats.
Super duper chats. All right. Ricky Chow, $5 super chat says $5 to start Harlequins at top of A. Love you guys. Heart.
We can be bought. Harlequins at top of A.
Well, I don't do it for the money, but I do it because I love him too.
Okay. Well, Ricky Chow, we love you. Jack loves Harlequins. I like Quins. Put them up there.
They're up there. Top of A. Done. Psycho John. Howdy from Texas, y'all. Thank you for being so helpful. What tournaments y'all intend to attend next, and how are my Necrons doing? Hype!
Hype. Well, I know Jack and I are both planning on going to LVO. I think John is as well. Tons of players there. Unfortunately, it's the old meta. Fortunately for some, unfortunately for others. Depends on your take. But we'll be over at LVO, one of the biggest competitions in the year, and then excited to start off the new 2023 season.
Yeah, I'm planning on going to Cherokee. It's a drive as opposed to a flight, so that makes it a lot easier to think about. Planning on going to Cherokee. Might go to Adepticon this year, not sure. Plenty of things to think about.
And then we've got Paw76 becoming a warrior member of the Browns tier, checking out all that new content. We got some excellent strategy sessions and 10-minute tips. I believe John just recorded one about piling in and consolidating out of engagement range. How do you even do that? John will tell you how.
Yep. And then we got a 2-pound super chat from John Apocalypse.
Whoa.
How's the Ghost Keel looking?
How is the Ghost Kill looking?
Better than before, for sure, because it doesn't have to deal with Armor of Contempt. You probably take the Cyclic Ion Raker now, because you don't have to deal with Armor of Contempt, as opposed to the Fusion Collider. And it's looking better, points are freed up, because you don't have to take those planes anymore.
I would
you
like
can
to
if
know
you want to.
how you can even know how a Ghost Kill is looking. Isn't it supposed to be stealthy?
Where is it?
Exactly.
Where is it? Where'd it go?
It's unanswerable questions over here.
All right, let's start this tier list. And because we've started the tier list, and Harlequins have started in top of A, they are now back down here.
Oh, poor Harlequins.
Yep, they started in top of A. You heard it here first, folks.
Well, everybody, we know who organized the armies into which order, because we're going to be starting off with the Blood Angels.
It is the alphabet. Except Admech, we wanted to talk about them later. But
everyone knows the alphabet starts with B.
The alphabet starts with B, not A, B.
All right, Jack, this is your baby. Tell me about them.
They got weird. They got real weird. They lost Armor of Contempt, and they were one of the best armies with it. They were one of the biggest beneficiaries outside T-Suns, which we'll get to. In exchange, they didn't get a lot of their bespoke units reduced in points, but they got a lot of free war gear on them, mostly Inferno pistols.
Well, I think Space Marines as a collective faction, we should just kind of cover roughly what happens to them. Better secondaries, a lot of free war gear, a lot of points reductions on the base cost of units, and no armor content.
Yeah, a lot of those didn't hit Blood Angels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the good secondaries are if you want to stay in Dev Doctrine with a lot of heavy weapons. Mm-hmm. That's Oath of Moment definitely got better, but they also lost 3 of their secondaries.
Oh, they just
Yeah, it's Relentless Assault. There's no Fury of the Lost. There's no whatever the Deep Strike Charge one's called, and there's no Blade of Sanguinius. So those are all out, but you get Oath of Moment back to where it was before.
Oath is good.
Oath is very good for that army. They love Oath. And then the points drops didn't really hit Blood Angel units. What really happened was they got pistols and some power weapons free on Death Company. Inferno pistols free on Sanguinary Guard, and Death Company went up 2 points.
Nice.
So, and then the Ball Predator went down to 110 with all of its war gear. I quite like it at that price point, but it does compete with the Gladiator Reaper or the Stormspeeder Hail Strike at that point, so it's not a unique piece. Mostly it's that you take the standard list, it sprouts 45 Inferno pistols out of nowhere. They literally just reach in their back pocket and go, whoop, 45 Inferno pistols.
So once again, this is not really a practical thing for those who don't want to rip off the arms of your 45 Space Marines and just start finding Inferno pistols on eBay. This is theoretical. But,
Yeah. Yeah, so you could. The standard list would just, as I said, sprout 45 Inferno pistols and start firing them in every direction. But it got way less durable. But it got, I would say, roughly comparable secondaries. I don't know. I think in terms of where the army is, I think it stayed in roughly the same spot, power level-wise, as it was before. Arks of Omen detachment is amazing for Blood Angels. They love that detachment. Because they were torn between a battalion and a patrol vanguard. Mm-hmm. Both of them had an upside, both of them had a downside, and the Arks of Omen is kind of like a marriage of the two.
Yeah.
Which is very nice. But they lost some durability, but they gained 1 million Inferno pistols, and the points cost on Thunderhammers and Power Fists and whatnot went down. Power Fists are free for Sanguinary Guard now, but you probably don't pay for them over the Incarmine Axe, whatever. Yeah, I think they're roughly in the same spot, because they lost a bunch of durability, but gained a bunch of Inferno pistols, better detachment, and then the secondaries probably stayed roughly the same in terms of strength. I would put them...
Let's toss them in A tier for now. I think Space Marines are just a really strong army these days.
I think Blood Angels do not see a lot of the reasons why Space Marines got better.
Oh, yeah?
Like, they just don't. I would put them top of B.
Top of B. B
Honestly,
for Blood Angels, start of the alphabet?
I think any army in A or B is a viable choice to take to an event.
Well, the first army is always kind of relative, right? It's
Yeah.
starting where we're framing a reference, so
Yeah.
let's just put it somewhere
Yeah.
and adjust.
We'll move stuff around as we go, for sure.
Before we get on to the other armies, though, we got 2 super chats to hit. We got Hedge with 50
Swedish krona.
Swedish kronas.
Krona.
Warriors with the permanent transhuman at 35 points per model was perfectly alright and should be brought back. Well, I don't know if Tyranid Warriors really needed to be what they were, but we will definitely be talking about the wonderful buffs the Tyranid faction got and how they went from S tier to S plus tier.
Right, exactly. They got better somehow with this. Somehow.
No.
Thunder Chicken Gaming, $5, says, Blood Angel player, doesn't it feel like free Inferno pistols and oversight that'll get nerfed? I'd be pissed to model them to get taken away. Doesn't feel that way. They left out a lot of war gear on Space Marines. I don't think this was a mistake.
Yeah.
I would be so surprised if they were like, oh yeah, Inferno pistols gets a price point, but not Inceptors, Plasma Incinerators, not like all of the war gear that got free.
As a counterpoint, I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was very intentional. Let's just make a bunch of war gear free. It's across the Space Marine Codex everywhere. Death Guard already doing it. Now Legionnaires and Chaos Marines do it. But they are willing to revert it. Like, as you saw with the Death Watch FAQ, they were like, maybe Thunderhammer, Storm Shield, Terminators should pay for their Cyclone missile launchers. And then they went back on that. So it could be an oversight that, comes to be after some play testing and Blood Angel players have 45 Inferno pistols.
Well,
and Games Workshop's
they
maybe we
paid
don't
for
want
it in the points that they released.
that. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's not an oversight. If you're looking to future-proof your army, I mean, probably don't give every model an Inferno pistol.
That's really what I mean, future-proofing.
Yeah.
Like, if every Blood Angel player just takes 45 Inferno pistols, maybe the Games Workshop gods James over there is like, I don't like that, and then just makes them cost 5 points a model again.
Yeah, it could happen. So, I mean, now's the perfect time to magnetize your arms.
Oh, that is some masochism if I ever
That
heard
is some John level stuff, but I mean, if you're running a competitive list, I think you need to have all those Inferno pistols in it, because otherwise your army just got worse. But I get that it's obnoxious, and I get that, it's just not fun. Inferno pistols are the Melta pistols. Yeah, the hand flamers are the ones, and they're strength 3.
We got CAK gifting 1 Art of War 40K membership. Appreciate you supporting our channel, giving away those subs.
And looking at lucky Dan Syker, who got it.
All right, let's keep it rolling. We've got, is this Chaos Knights?
This is Chaos Knights, because it's C, and then Imperial Knights is all the way up.
Somewhere else.
I can't. Chaos Knights!
I like Chaos Knights a lot lately. I've been playing them, I've been learning them, I've been exploring my Chaos roots. I think they're quite strong. One of the best things Chaos Knights can do is take the big Gatling chain cannons on a variety of war dogs, and that's Strength 6, AP2, and Mass. You know what's really, really good? That versus no armor of contempt. You can just really just shoot people off the table with Chaos Knights. Their dread tables really mess with the non-armor of contempt, or rather non-Space Marine factions of the game, the ones that are vulnerable to morale. So I think they have a lot of tools. They will still struggle with the things that Knights struggle with, as in they present a stat check of here's my 1,000,000 toughness 7 wounds, and then if your opponent's like, I'm playing Leagues of Votann, you're gonna have a bad day. But I think in most matchups, Chaos Knights are actually quite strong.
I think they are. They didn't get worse at all. They were already a good army. And I think the power level of the meta has come down a little bit.
Yeah, I think overall the game's a little bit less powerful.
A little bit less powerful, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 armies that got elevated or maybe newly released. But I think Chaos Knights are very strong right now. I think, there's going to be a lot of vehicles in this meta. There's going to be a lot of shooting is what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And if you stand up there and you want to trade with the big boys, you're going to be taking some pain if you go second. That's the only thing I can see that would keep Chaos Knights down, because they have an amazing suite of rules.
Yeah.
And they're very strong, and you can take a lot of guns. Like, Brigands are ludicrous. That's the Chain Cannon Melta one, where you get 1 of each. They're so good. You can take Worthy Offerings if you want to just get +1 to hit against all of the other vehicle-based armies out there, and you will chew up Iron Hands if you go first. They'll chew you up if they go first.
I mean, there's always going to be guns versus guns, stat checks versus stat checks, but I think as an army, ignoring that one dynamic to it, it's got really good matchups across the board elsewise. I think it's just got a bit of a coin flip scenario versus certain factions. I think I'm willing to put it in A tier. I think it's better
for
than
sure.
Blood Angels.
100%. That's an A tier for me. They are very good. They're very good. Little bit of a consistency issue at events.
I think you'll struggle to like win LVO with Chaos Knights because you could just have a game where you failed too many saves 1 second versus Tau. It can get ugly, but in most of your games, it shouldn't get ugly.
Yes, I think Chaos Knights are phenomenal right now, and if you're trying to play like Harlequins into Chaos Knights, just like it's just no fun playing into Chaos Knights with some armies.
Chaos Knights leadership and then the random indirect they pack, it can hard counter a lot of things that traditionally give Knights fits.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about Chaos Marines, huh?
Mr. Abadu got nerfed.
Yep.
We've lost Armor of Contempt. Our Terminator bricks, that whole playstyle really took a hit on the face. But we did get some silver linings. Iron Warriors actually got their Legion trait back, and in a world with no Armor of Contempt, they have pseudo Armor of Contempt, which is actually really nice. We just talked about how chain cannons got really good. Not if they're playing against people who ignore AP 1 and 2.
Yeah, well, they reduce AP 2 to 1, and then they stand in cover, and suddenly they're getting 3-ups and 2-ups against the chain cannons, yeah.
Yeah, and then, so people who will be taking those AP 1 weapons in mass, those AP dash weapons, and even AP 2 in mass, having that reduction on that is actually super strong as a counter meta thing. And then you also get free upgrades all over your Legionnaires, so that's really nice because it lets you... Like a 5-man unit with a Reaper Chain Cannon. I like the Flamer as the free one because you get the +2 shots in Chaos. You get a Sergeant with a Power Fist and a Demon Blade, and then you get a Heavy Chain Axe. 90 points for that thing. Really, really strong. Pretty spammable, to be honest. And if you want to spend points to give them... I like giving them Mark of Tzeentch in the Iron Warriors list. That'll make your Reaper Cannon AP2, and then you're ignoring cover with it. All of a sudden, you're the shooting army in the game.
Does that make them 105 points with the...
It'll make them 105.
Got it, yeah.
It's a little bit more pricey, but I think 105 is still perfectly reasonable for how much that unit outputs.
Yeah, just increasing the AP, blanking a failed save, and then you have things like intercept, like off-spec scan, basically, that sort of thing.
Another thing...
It's called like Demon Scan or something, but
Yeah. Chaos Space Marines also benefit a ton from the new Arks of Omen's attachment. One of the big challenges CSM faced was, one, having to play battalions. Your troops were kind of ass. Now you actually like your troops. And then two, a battalion limited you to 3 HQs, which is really like if you want to take Triple Disco, which is an awesome offensive character out loadout, or like 2 Discos and a Demon Prince, that's your HQ sweep. Now you can do that 4th slot, which really lets you get that buff Master of Possession, or that buff Dark Apostle, or both, and 2 Disco Lord, something like that. Really,
yeah, those are the Lord Discordants.
Just Lord Discordants, yeah. You really can diversify your army and really lean into the character output. And then also, you can take a free Demon Patrol. They're just units in your codex, basically, which is amazing, because the demons have a lot of value to add to CSM, but they always cost you CP, which you needed to play, to include them. So I actually think CSM probably ended up in like a net neutral spot between the buffs and the decreases. I think the builds are going to get a lot different. Obviously, the Terminators and Abaddon directly took nerfs. Emperor's Children took slight nerfs in the Marcus Lanesh. But overall, I think CSM is fine. I think they're probably a little bit ahead of Blood Angels. Either bottom of A or top of B is my guess.
Yeah, they feel very like together, kind of like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of like next to each other. They kind of do similar things, honestly.
I mean, the Chaos Space Marines still have the problem that they have not great secondaries for most of the legions. And even when you do have great secondaries, it leads to other problems. Like Fraggy Spile secondary is great, but he has problems like with the shooting phase and things like that.
All right. You know how I said that Blood Angels didn't really benefit from a lot of the buffs? They got a benefit, but they didn't really benefit from a lot of it. Well, guess what? Black Templars got a lot of benefits from the new changes.
Jack Templars?
Quite a few. The Jack Templars are probably going to hit the table fairly soon. They got quite a few things in a number of different archetypes, which I think is really cool. Black Templars didn't really rely on Armor of Contempt as much, and they have a lot of AP 1 and 2 weapons in combat. They have a lot of chain swords. So Armor of Contempt was like almost net neutral for Black Templars because they got it, but you weren't really using it because you weren't stacking your armor save like other chapters were. You weren't stacking your armor save because you couldn't get cover because you were taking the 5-up invuln and 5-up invuln and you couldn't be wounded on 1s or 2s. And you weren't getting cover, which meant almost always, even with Armor of Contempt, you're going to the invuln either way. And you also have a lot of guys with a 4-up armor save, the novitiates or the initiates. I can never keep them straight. So they never didn't really benefit from Armor of Contempt as much. They have a lot of problems killing people in combat if they have Armor of Contempt, because there are a lot of AP 1 and 2. So, when Armor of Contempt goes away, Black Templars don't really care as much. You know what they do care about?
All the points drops everywhere.
All the points drops everywhere. A lot. And they really like the Arks of Omen detachment, same as like every Marine player everywhere. They love the Arks of Omen detachment. Their Primaris Crusader squads got pretty cheap. Like, pretty cheap. They went down 2 points per model on all of it, and all the war gear became free. You can get a 20-man squad for like 300 points, almost.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And then you just lean back on your protection of your 5-up invuln of the Uphold the Honor of the Emperor. You just lean back on that and the Transhuman being difficult to wound, and you're kind of in the same place you were before. Then a lot of other things in that codex got points drops. Helbrecht is a cheap 140. Grimaldus went down as well. I forget exactly how much. Emperor's Champion is 90 for whatever good that does him. But you Primaris Sword Brethren, real good unit now. They used to be pretty not great, but now they get all their war gear for free. So in a squad of 10 for 22 points a model, you get 2 Thunderhammers for free, 2 Twin Lightning Claws for free, 2 Power Axes, 4 Power Swords, 4 AP1 Hand Flamers, 2 Plasma Pistols, and you get all of that for free, and it's 22 points. And they have the benefit of ignoring the you can't take cover thing. So they can actually take cover and get the 5 Binvul and the mini Transhuman and have a 2-up save and cover. Great. But that's not even the biggest change. That's not the biggest change. Black Templars can be a mech army now because they had a special rule that was never used before at all that said you can upgrade repulsors, repulsor executioners, any kind of gladiator, and an impulsor with a multi-melta. And that multi-melta, and it's just like, it's instead of one of the heavy stubbers. So it's functionally just added on to whatever kit that vehicle had. It doesn't replace a relevant weapon. It's just added on. But it used to cost 20 points per model, and you weren't taking those vehicles anyway, so it was a bit of a meme. Well, now all of those vehicles came down and are now relevant point costs. And that multi-melta is now free.
Yeah, I've seen some theoretical lists which are like, take 10 impulsors full of dudes and just like, what did you call it? Like, play like Harlequins?
It's slow Harlequins.
Slow Harlequins.
That's what I named. That's what I named the build. I love the slow Harlequin build. It's, between that and like cheap infantry that you can put in, cheap troops, the fact that impulsors went down 10, they're now cheap 100, and you get them with heavy stubber, or no, you get them with frag storms, I think, or no, Stormbolter, then an Iron Hail heavy stubber array, or a missile launcher, and a free multi-melta, and then I think another gun on there as well. It's a lot of firepower for 100 points. A lot of it. And they have a 5-up invuln from Uphold the Honor of the Emperor. Can't be wounded on a 2, which comes up, once in a blue moon, but they have a 5-up invuln, and they all of your vehicles have a free multi-melta. Awesome.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna lean into the durability aspects of Space Marines and a lot of the points efficiencies that exist now, I think Black Templars are definitely one of the faction legions you want to be looking at. I think they're an A tier, personally.
I think for sure.
Yeah.
I think some kind of Black Templar build, if everyone's going tank heavy, then like 80 to 100 models that are mini transhuman with a 5-up invuln is going to, and they're all troops and can all sticky objectives.
It makes my GSC look real sad.
It makes your GSC look real sad. It makes a lot of tank armies that are taking things like neutron lasers, stuff like that are like D3 2 shots, whatever.
Right.
It makes them really, really sad. I think that build could be very good in this meta, and I think the tank build is not just funny, but also pretty good.
Yeah.
I know I saw a version that had 10 units of assault intercessors and 10 impulsors. I saw the build I made had like, it's in our Discord, but because I posted up to the Black Templar people, I was just like, do what you will with this. It was like 30 Sword Brethren, 6 Impulsors, 3 Gladiator Lancers, Gladiator Reaper, and Helbrecht, and a Tech Marine, Primaris Tech Marine. All of them have free multi-meltas. All of them have a 5-up invuln. I think it's a good list. I want to put it on the table.
I know you're excited about the Jack
Very
Templars. We have probably 20-something more armies to go through, so let's keep it rolling. Let's talk about the Adeptus Custodes. But actually, before we get too far on that train, let's talk about Shiv Central's $5 super chat.
£5.
£5. Always correcting the currencies, you know. That's what we're here for. Don't know why, but trust you guys more than GW themselves. Appreciate that. What do you think will happen to Space Marines power level for Crusade and Crusade itself? This is outside of the scope of this tier list.
I don't even know what you're talking about. Unfortunately, we don't do Crusade or power level for Crusade here.
Historically, they really don't mess with the power level of units. Despite the points getting shifted all over the place, they really don't mess with power level. This doesn't really affect match play too much. I can definitely understand the ramifications to Crusade. I wouldn't expect any changes at this point. I'm not G-Dub, so maybe I'm wrong, but that would be my expectation. And Crusade itself, I don't even know if they update that section of rules, to be honest.
I have no idea. Yeah, it's been a while since I looked at Crusade.
Yeah, well, appreciate your super chat either way, Shift Central, and thank you for your support. All right, Jack.
All right.
Another army that got a lot better, Adeptus Custodes.
It did. It got a lot better. So the buffs that Custodes got were, first off, they were good into Tyranids. The buffs that they got were, you can now use any of the strats that were locked to a number, to only using them once a game. You can use as many times as you want. Their targets did not change. So you can still only use the transhuman and no rerolls on infantry. And then non-core, it's core infantry, not non-core infantry. Core infantry now, instead of just troops, have objective secured. Which helps a little, but the biggest one is that your troops can now just pile 1 CP strats all over. And then also, they love the Arks of Omen detachment. They probably love it more than anyone else, because they don't start with like 1 CP now. And, you know, it's not, I took a Warlord trait and a relic.
Troops, yeah,
you don't have to take 3 troops or not have things. You know, it's the Arks of Omen detachment Custodes really love. And I think Custodes are well placed in the current meta to be, they're, you know, if you take the vehicle army where you take Dreads and you take Caladius, I think the Caladius switch to Arachnus, because Arachnus will punch holes in some tanks for sure. But if you take that build, I think it's really good at killing enemy tanks. Very survivable. I think that's a really good build in the current meta.
What about the infantry?
You can also take a bike swarm build where you have a lot of Melta missiles, which are very good into enemy tanks, although you don't have any of your defensive strats on them. Not awesome. But I think a foot build has really opened up in a way that did not really exist before, where you can take units, put them on an objective, and like actually trust that if you use strats on them, they'll be there at the start of the turn, which is just, you know, not the case before. I'm excited. You can do kind of a hybrid build. I think the vehicle-based build is still probably going to be the raw power strongest,
but maybe not the most like playable as far as like consistency at a tournament goes, because the vehicle build probably does bring the raw power and it's excellent in team formats. But in singles events, you could find yourself in a similar situation to Knight armies where it's like, oh, I'm going second versus Votann. Oh boy.
Well, I've actually I've talked to some people who are testing out the list because they were considering it for LVO. And they played into Votann about 3 times and ran it over every time. Wow. And the reason that he gave for that was because Votann relies a lot on AP2 2 damage, which you get a 4-up against, it becomes 1 damage, then you get a 6-up against on the Dreads. And so he found that the Dreads were just living through Votann firepower. You also have a 4-up against all the mortal wounds they can pull out. So I think Custodes into Votann is actually like a good matchup.
Well, Votann was a theoretical, this is my gun army, not so much about Custodes versus Votann in a head-to-head.
Yes. Into like Iron Hands, you definitely don't want to go second. I hear what you're saying.
Right.
I think that's a good army if a little, as you're saying, has going second into masked guns problem, for sure. For sure.
I've always wondered if Custodes have... I think the infantry build opens up a lot more play to play the mission and hide and do janky, cool stuff, which is always speaking to me as a player. You know?
Right, yeah.
Where do you think they'll end up?
I think they probably ended up in A tier, honestly. They have a variety of builds that seem good.
They seem like an alternate to Black Templars, like if tough dudes walking around.
Yeah, I think they're a little bit worse than Black Templars. I'd much rather have more bodies that are harder to wound than
better saves.
Better saves. I mean, you can turn on 4-up to wound, but you can't like put your army in the center, whereas Black Templars can be like, here's 100 dudes.
Yeah.
That feels a little more reliable. And then the tank builds are roughly comparable. I think Black Templars is untested, whereas the Custodes build does punch holes in tanks.
The one thing I do like about Custodes over Templars is that by taking 100 dudes or taking 10 impulses, whichever variation you go, you're giving a secondary to your opponent, be it no prisoners or bring it down. Custodes can realistically deny all the secondaries to your opponent.
They can. They've been pretty good at that. Even the vehicle dread build is pretty good at denying bring it down, because all the dreads that are pressuring you give up 1 point, and the Caladius that try to avoid dying and pick away give up 2, so you actually get far fewer points than you think you're going to. A good point that was pointed out by the Red Thirst is Dread Custodes not an auto loss versus Guard? It is. Yeah, you cannot. That matchup is basically unwinnable, because as long as the finial combination with the mortal wounds, with Kasserkin, with Born soldiers, with their
it's a Guard getting
strats.
FAQ.
Yeah, once that chain of rules gets broken, then Custodes can play that matchup fine. But once a Kasserkin unit can walk out and drop 3 Custodes dreads on average in 1 activation, yes, that matchup is unplayable. But I expect that will get fixed at some point.
One can hope.
Yeah.
One can also hope the next army we're going to talk about will also get fixed at some point, because we're talking about the theoretical hyper shooting lists. Well, this is one of them.
Yes, we have not put Iron Hands on the table.
We're gonna soon.
We're going
I think
to
it's
soon.
next week on schedule.
Our good friend Quentin Johnson has put it on the table versus his teammates 3 times.
Oh, no.
And he has done vicious and brutal things to them.
Oh no, not vicious and brutal.
Yeah, it's bad. Brutal, but cunning, etc.
Is it cunning?
No, it's not. I think he just shot them to death.
So the thing here is that Iron Hands can now permanently sit in Devastator Doctrine. For those of you who remember the end of 8th edition, this is what you did. And that means their whole army is going to reroll once to hit, pretty much, and it's going to be an extra point of AP. And then you take all of the very, very cheap vehicles and Space Marines now, and you have this army that's really tough to kill with 6-up Feel No Pain and better AP and reroll ones.
Count as double wounds.
Count as double wounds for the degradation tier, so it's hard to actually make any headway on these things unless you actually pick them off the table. There's like 15 vehicles in this list. Gladiators are very cheap, and they shoot you.
And we're talking like 3 Gladiator Lancers, like a Gladiator Reaper, to like 3 Stormspeeder Thunderstrikes, like 3 Invictors, maybe a Grav Pod with, 2...
I love me some Grav Pod.
Yeah, it's 3 Grav Cannons, 1 Multi-Melta, and then like a Thunderhammer Combi Melta on the Sergeant. And you take 2 of those, you put it in a drop pod, and you just go boom, and you just kill.
It's oppressive in the firepower dilemma. I don't know if armies... maybe janky armies like Eldar, Demons could potentially play it, but there's so much raw power to this list that it's going to stat check most armies right off the board.
Yeah, real hard. If you're looking to exist on the board, you have to go first into this, and you have to have enough guns to make it so they don't shoot you back.
I'm a little worried that between Astra Militarum in their current iteration and Iron Hands, durability as a concept in the game is really just not going to work. But time will tell.
Yeah, your durability is not getting shot, not anything else. Like, maybe Harlequins have it right. -6-inch range, saves don't matter, just like run away and hide.
Harlequins got nerfed into oblivion. They got -1 invul. They're terrible, right? Exactly.
Yeah. We'll get to them.
Iron Hands and S tier. I think it's really like.
I think so.
If we're gonna fuse S tier, where else to put stuff?
So the reason why it makes S tier instead of A tier, to me, is the secondaries.
What? We haven't even touched on that. What do Iron Hands do for secondaries?
Okay, so just to set the stage, the way you beat armies that have overwhelming firepower, massed vehicles, and whatnot is you just outscore them. Most of the time, they're not great at scoring points, so you just outscore them and we're all good.
Their strategy is to table you and then figure out points later. So if you can either score 1,000,000 points or hide and score points, well, their strategy didn't work.
Exactly. Well, that's not the case with Iron Hands. First off, Oaths of Moment came back as a good secondary that you can take, and you will. That's fine, no problem with that. But the one that really kills me is Codex Warfare. They buffed Codex Warfare in probably the worst way. So now it used to be 1 point for Dev, but now before the change it was 2 points for Devastator Doctrine every time you killed an enemy unit with a heavy or grenade weapon in Dev Doctrine, every time you kill a unit with a rapid fire assault weapon in Tactical Doctrine, and 1 point for that, and then 1 point for every kill in Assault Doctrine with a melee or pistol weapon, up to 5 points for each category, and it was garbage, because your opponent could hide for 1 turn, and then you were fighting to see if you could even get a 10.
Yeah.
But now you can sit in Devastator Doctrine all game.
Naturally just shoot people.
So fine. But then they went ahead and removed the cap of 5 on each category.
So you're going to score 2 points?
Yeah, you don't see the Tactical Doctrine part of Codex Warfare. You don't see the Assault Doctrine part of Codex Warfare.
At least not for this faction.
They just... I don't think you take Codex Warfare unless you do that, because it's while your army is in that doctrine, not anything else. So if you're Blood Angels, you start scoring 1 point per kill on turn 3.
Yeah.
Iron Hands score 2 points per kill starting on turn 1. So if Iron Hands kill 7 units on the board, they get a 14, because you're just killing them with heavy weapons. You're always in Devastator Doctrine. If they kill 8, they get a 15. And that's just going to happen.
Yeah, there's units in the game.
There's units in the game. You take like 20 units. If you
take 10 units, you get tabled. That's their plan. It happens.
Yeah, it happens. But even if you play a normal game of 40k and you try to conserve resources, you're still going to lose like half your army by the end. That's how 40k works. And yeah, it's a free 15 secondary. Then you combine that with Oaths of Moment, and then they have a third one. I forget. You take Shock Tactics, I think, and you just shoot them off their objectives and move a vehicle onto it, and you get 4 points. Yeah. Iron Hands have great secondaries and a ton of raw power. They slide right into S tier for me.
Before we move on to our other S tier armies, which are all of them, we got a couple super chats we got to hit. Let's scroll up a bit.
Yep.
So we've got a new member on the bronze tier, Unaided
Foot 3531.
Unaided. Well, that's what happens when you remove spaces in names. Unaided Foot, thank you so much for your membership. We really appreciate your support. And Sandrello, for the $14 Canadian super chat, do you think they might remove power level intent, since power level used to represent the potential power of the unit, but with almost all war gear becoming free, they don't have a lot of difference in use anymore? Yeah, there's not really much purpose to power level if you just make all the war gear free. It's a really intro way to play 40k, in my opinion. Like, instead of saying, here's Battle Scribe, or here's 400 different points to try to figure out and cross-reference, your unit costs 6, your unit costs 9, add up to 50 or 100, whatever power level you're playing. I think that, as a beginner intro level, is really great and approachable. As you get past intro 40k, I think it becomes a little bit moot. So I think it's still worth including for that, but they really need to create that separation between the two reasons to have them.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. All right, so Iron Hands, I think, are one of the best armies in the game right now. Great secondaries, raw power, shooting, scary, durable, pew-pew. Let's go to Eldar. So we've got the good old craft worlds. So this army got quite a few changes as well, in a variety of different directions. One of my favoriteest units ever, the Swooping Hawks, took quite the points nerf, from original cost of 18 all the way up to 20, and now 25. At 25 points a model, you might see one unit of 10, just because they still do the whole thing where they fly forward, shoot the crap out of something, and teleport back behind a wall, unable to be shot, very uninteractable, which is kind of how Eldar likes to play. But 25 is steep for a unit that doesn't do too much damage. And it's really just activating the unit a million times over the course of the game. But there's other changes too. Farseers and Warlocks went up, which is annoying because you pretty much have to take those. And then your Shroud Runners went down 5, which really opens up taking a lot more Shroud Runners. Hidden stealth buff as well, unlimited fire and fade. Everybody loves unlimited fire and fade. Everybody loves unlimited fire and fade. You can't make me pick.
And then, of course, we've got no Armor of Contempt in the game, which really, Eldar is an army that can absolutely spam AP dash and AP1 firepower. Like, we're talking like a 200 shots a turn kind of army, if you want to build it that way. But against like 2-up save Space Marines that still take 2-up saves from AP1, it really didn't do anything. But now that Armor of Contempt is gone, and you could potentially ignore cover or go back to Hail of Doom, I think mass volume firepower Eldar is still hyper viable.
Yeah, so the reason it wasn't before, AP0 didn't change with Armor of Contempt, is because people aren't looking to stack armor saves in the same way, right? You're not trying to take a 2-up armor save with Armor of Contempt in cover plus a spell, where if you shoot it with AP0, it just bounces off. People are looking to go in other directions, and you might still see some 2-up armor, but it's not going to be as prevalent because people aren't rewarded as much for going 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, So it's quite a lot better.
I'll also say Eldar had 3 armies that really put the boots to them in the previous, in the current iteration of 40k, I should say, before the Arks of Omen stuff. That'd be Thousand Suns, especially with the new Flamer variation. They really couldn't damage Terminators, and Flamers are just such a menace for the faction. Both of those things got nerfed. Tyranids, well, Poor Tyranids.
Yeah, rip.
And then Harlequins took a bit of a step back as well with that -1 invul. All 3 factions were hard counters to Eldar, so all 3 getting nerfed in some capacity definitely helps elevate Eldar's effectiveness.
There are 2 things in the meta that I think we should touch on. One, and not as importantly, is GSC is on the way up because a lot of their hard counters got nerfed, and they are very rough pumpkins for Eldar.
Oh, I think Eldar totally fine at GSC. We got Forewarned, we got screens for days. I don't think that's a challenge match. But I do think Astra Militarum.
Astra Militarum is uncontroversial. I think GSC is rough for Eldar.
We can agree to disagree.
We can agree to disagree. But my point is, Guard mortars are not great for Eldar.
Yeah, Guard indirect, real. Guard's gonna find their way in S tier. I'll spoil it right now. But Eldar, I think as far as an army goes, they got better. Swooping Hawks and Farseers took a nerf. Shroudrunners came down and rules got better. And then their hard counters, save for Guard, directly took nerfs. So
directly, yes.
I think they found themselves solidly in A tier.
I think so. I think they're ending up somewhere in this.
I think, well, it's interesting because when you go into head-to-heads, Eldar's perfectly fine to Chaos Knights typically, but they might struggle versus like Black Templars. So, I mean, somewhere in there.
They do get hit real bad by Custodes, but I think a direct head-to-head is not.
Yeah, that's not really criteria. Yeah,
because I think Custodes with like Caladius and vehicles and whatnot are real bad for Eldar.
It can get ugly.
Yeah. I think we just shouldn't put too much emphasis on where each individual faction is.
Yeah, they're in A tier.
Yeah, they're in A tier. You know, if you want to argue this way, I'll listen to that. That sounds perfectly reasonable. You want to go this way, that's also perfectly reasonable. Mm-hmm. Harlequins. So we just said that they got trashed. They're garbage. Get out of here.
-1 invul. Throw
-1
the
invul. They're terrible. Anyway, I played a game against Siegs the other day.
In the war room.
In the war room. With new Harlequins. And turn 1, just giving you a very brief summary. Turn 1, I did nothing because I just didn't want him to score his grind and whatnot, and he wasn't scoring points on his bottom of turn 1. Then turn 2, I took a little scoring, little sousson of scoring. All right, he pushed me, so I couldn't do the scoring again. So I ran at him, and by turn 4, he was tabled.
Yeah. So Harlequins, they went from debatably the best army in the game, definitely in consideration, to -1 invul, and that kind of change. -1 save across your army does feel terrible. But when you were the best army in the game and you take that kind of a nerf, it really just brings you back down to earth.
It really does. I think Harlequins are in a complicated place, for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think they are still a perfectly viable army. I think they're going to settle. I would bet my life that they're going to be over a 50% win rate. I would, really.
Jack's willing to die over Harlequin's win rate.
Yeah, I want to get something good out of that, if I'm correct. But, yes, I think Harlequins are still going to be a good army. They got some buffs. They got Harvester of Torment plus Favor of Chegarak is now a combo again. It was at the start of when the book came out, got nerfed. Now it's unnerfed. Mirror Architect is completely unnerfed, and it is one of the dumbest upgrades you can possibly take in the game. They did get points hikes, fair enough, but they are very broken interactions, and you get those. Now, I will say the troops version, the version where you take foot troops and you try and do cool stuff with them, that's dead. You can't take 10-man, 12-man squads, especially not with Guard indirect mortars out there. You can't do that. It's sad, it's unfortunate. The foot troops are so easy to kill. Mm-hmm. That's unfortunate. But the boats still aren't. They still aren't easy to kill because you are -1 to hit them. You cannot reroll hits. They have an invul, and they might have Mirror Architect near them because they benefit from that all of a sudden again. They're not easy to kill en masse. You can still rush people down if you want to. You probably can't let them get the first hit, though. I think they've narrowed down significantly. I think you're either taking a boat build or you're not taking Harlequins, which is unfortunate. I mean, they only have like 6 units, so whatever. That's unfortunate. They will survive a lot less. There's a lot less wiggle room in terms of slugging it out. But I think they still score well, though they score worse than before. Their secondaries did catch nerfs. Behind enemy lines, they love behind enemy lines. They like that. But I think in general, their secondaries took a nerf. Their durability took a nerf. They went from a 60% win rate to like a 52. You need to nerf an army very, 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 very hard to take it down below 50% when it was at 60.
So I think Harlequins, remember we're doing this off of the back of maximum potential, like best player in the world on the best Harlequins, etc. I think Harlequins got harder for mid-table players to use. They directly are less durable, and a lot of times mid-table players typically just like run their stuff into your face and kind of stat check you, which Harlequins could currently do with 4 Invuls versus a lot of factions.
It's my plan for OVO.
I don't mid-table players. I think Harlequins also they're gonna lose that little brute force to them, which I personally love. I think Harlequins really are not a brute force style army, or at least they should not be based on army design, and they need to bring a little finesse to the game. And I think if you are a great player, you can totally do that and still pull out the wins.
Yeah, I think for sure. What is it? You said that there's 2 kinds of Harlequin players. Mm-hmm. There's good players and new players.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, they're going to be very hard to play now. They're going to be hard to play. They're difficult army. They're finesse army. They're probably the hardest army now to play, like on an actually playing 40k level, not like an Admech level where he's like, it's hard to play because a human brain can only comprehend 16 command phase buffs and there's 30. Like, they're hard to play in a real playing 40k is difficult kind of way, in where they have to use their movement to stay alive, but they have to kind of get aggressive, but they have to be defensive. I think it's a good army, but a newer player starting Harlequins going to an event with them is probably going to have a rough time. That's unfortunate, but then you will probably get better quicker than the people who are playing things like Death Guard. You know, Death Guard do really well early, but you don't get better as fast, whereas Harlequins, you're probably going to get smashed a bit, and then in a year, it's like, oh, I actually learned how to play 40k.
Let's just rank them. So I think between A and B is where I'm feeling.
I honestly think they're still an A tier army.
Yeah.
I mean, they were here, they got nerfed, and they got buffed.
They did get buffed. They got their Super Jester.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then also all of the enemy armies lost Armor of Contempt.
It's true.
Which is a big deal. Because they cap out at AP2 pretty much in combat. Their builds narrow down quite a lot, but I still think they're going to keep a decent win rate inside the respectable band. Do I think it was the best way to nerf the army? Probably not. They could have been a little more finessey with how they did it rather than just boom. But I think the army's still in a good place.
So we got a couple super chats and memberships to shout out over here. Davi
Mateus Macedo Soares. And I probably messed up some of that, but
well, better than me. So he's been a member for 6 months, the bronze level. Thank you so much. Hate how they didn't change the Eldar secondaries. They were barely taken already, and they removed one of the better ones. Yeah, I actually like how Eldar secondaries are very fluid from game to game to game. It rewards you for knowing how to play each specific mission scenario, your opponent, etc. I take Scout the Enemy sometimes. I take Wrath the Kane sometimes. I would love them to be better, but as a general game philosophy, I'd prefer if secondaries were niche and difficult than easy and automatic.
yeah.
And then we got Sebastian Magnuson with 50 Swedish krona. How would you describe in your own what happened to the Harlequins' butts? I think they took a light spanking, like a nice, gentle, what they deserved, personally.
I will not speculate on what happens to Harlequin behinds.
All right.
Back in
Well, then let's bring it off to the demons.
Let's do it. Demons.
Okay.
What about demons?
Demons are interesting. They got some nerfs, they got some buffs. The new Arks Army Detachment, this is probably the only faction in the game that actually didn't like it, because it means you only get 1 detachment of demons total, and you're not really going to get to make use of Warp Storm mono-faction abilities, unless you specifically take a mono-faction list, like I'm playing only Khorne units or only Tzeentch units in my detachment. So that's very limiting. The nice things are they did get some points drops across all their medium-sized models like Blood Crushers, Fiends, Fleshhounds especially, Seekers. All those guys got cheaper. Skullcans got cheaper. Troops like Plague Bears and Horrors got cheaper. All that's great. I would say that also the Flamers got nerfed. You know, they have to roll the hit now, which I think is an elegant debuff. They were a little too broken. They were a lot too broken. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, you can still hit on a 2-up rerollable if you really try. Either way, a 3-up reroll ones is probably fine, and then this means that they won't ruin you on Overwatch.
That's really what the nerf is. Like it's worse. Like if you just send a unit off, it advances and now hits on 4s with no rerolls. That's 50% as good as before, and then on Overwatch, it's like 1/6 as good as before. So definitely hit the unit. Didn't kill the unit. I think that's a great spot to put it. Overall, I think Demons took a little bit of a hit. I think the Warp Storm thing is a big deal. The put a lot of work in the codex, but I think the builds are going to diversify. I really think demons make an excellent ally to CSM nowadays because you can just toss them in and as if they're part of your faction, basically, not spending CP on it. I think demons probably ended up at the top of B tier ahead of CSM, is my guess. Right around Harlequins, right below Harlequins, something like that.
So like here-ish?
Like there-ish. They could be bottom of A tier. It's hard to say.
We'll mix things around later, I think.
But I'm satisfied with that, even though they're my favorite faction ever.
You've been testing them. You've been putting together some builds that feel real good. You think that's where they are, I believe.
I think there's also some room for Disciples of Be'lakor to maybe elevate that, but I haven't really explored what that build looks like. I think it's very interesting, and definitely something I'm looking to explore some more. And then we've got Jackson Schumpert, who's been a member for 3 months, for the Quinn build that puts you...
For the Quinn build that I put in the Quinn's chat. Do I think dropping a boat and putting a bear troop squad in strategic reserves and getting more weapons would be a good alternative? I think that would do well for you. I like, personally, in the boat build, just having as many boats as possible because they survive by there being too many for your opponent to deal with. Anybody can deal with one Harlequin boat. Anybody can deal with 2 or 3. But while you have 8 and they all have guys in them, they kind of all cover for each other because your opponent can only deal with so many, and then every other one gets unanswered. And that's why I like having 8. But that is a good shout if you want to play that, would be having strategic reserves. You come in, you try and force your opponent to spread out, but they will block you off from being able to get like behind enemy lines or that sort of thing. So I don't think having a bear troop and strategic reserve against better players will get you as far. It will force them to spread out. You can't quite punish that as much.
And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Jack posted a list in our Discord server, which you get as soon as you become a member of the channel. You get access to the best players in the world, literally writing lists to you in the new meta. Chase Ladner, who's ready to do the Space Marine tier list.
To redo them,
We'll be redoing them. Appreciate your $2 super chat.
They changed up a lot.
And then we got Miss Wubwub. Where do you each speculate World Eaters to rank?
Yeah, that is literally impossible to tell. We don't know any of their rules.
Yeah.
Their secondaries are good, and I think knowing literally nothing else about the army other than their secondaries, that sounds like A tier to me.
I was going to go with B tier just because an army that really just punches stuff and moves is good, but they need something else. Secondaries, getting both is kind of that something else. So between A and B, off the cusp, but without knowing the rules, it's hard to say. Nonetheless, we appreciate your super chat. Speaking of Space Marines, Dark Angels. This is an army that changed a lot.
Yes. So, the biggest change... So, there were some changes to Deathwing and to Greenwing. Greenwing got a lot of points free. Actually, there's a lot of changes to all aspects of Dark Angels. So, Deathwing, cheaper Terminators, free Thunderhammer, Storm Shields. That means you can spam them out a lot more. You can give them -1 damage. They get transhuman. That build is going to be obnoxious to deal with. For sure. No doubt. Maybe Charlie Andre can sneak in that 60th Terminator or something. I don't know. But I don't think that's where the biggest changes came. I think a lot of the biggest changes came in Greenwing and then especially Ravenwing, which we'll talk about in a second. Greenwing gets really good plasma. Like, really good plasma. Devastators with plasma cannons for 115. That's real good. And then you can give them +1 damage. Plasma Inceptors for 40 points per model, I think gets spammed out in Greenwing. Greenwing is the not Ravenwing, not Deathwing part of it, just the rest of Dark Angels. And obviously you can mix and match, so you get to take, some Plasma Inceptors and some Black Knights together. But generally that part of it really focuses on the plasma, really focuses on the units getting cheaper, and loves it. Just absolutely adores those changes. But Ravenwing has gotten a little silly. Now, I haven't put it on the board, but Ravenwing, I think, is roughly in terms of Iron Hands, in terms of the buffs that it got. Very simple. You stay in Dev Doctrine forever, and what that means is that every Ravenwing unit in your army gets +3-inch move and advance and shoot for the whole game.
Yeah, and they got a lot cheaper too.
They did get cheaper. Black Knights retained their free Corvus hammers and went down 5 points per model. Storm Speeders of all varieties went down. The Thunderstrike went down 15, probably the best one. There's just a lot of points drops. A lot of Landspeeder Vengeances went down to 100 and are just good, like just real good. Samael Talon Masters, those went down. Really just good across the board. And that army just comes together and is incredibly fast, like insanely fast. I built an army that took 30 Black Knights because they have combat squads. So you can take 6 units of 5. One unit can pre-game move. They all move 17, and they advance at 23 inches and shoot. It is super obnoxious. It shoots incredibly hard, and it's incredibly fast. Yeah. In addition, it has the same great secondaries as Iron Hands, which lets it be that kind of army. Honestly, I have more faith in fast armies than I do in slow shooting armies.
Me too. I think Ravenwing are amazing.
Yeah, I think Ravenwing go up to S tier alongside Iron Hands.
Glad we didn't pair them into my Fabius Bile.
Yeah.
And then,
Dark Angels got a massive benefit from it, and they didn't lose as much from losing Armor of Contempt on Ravenwing because they all have a 5-up invuln, and if they advance, which they can advance and shoot, they do take a -1 to hit penalty on all their weapons, but if they advance, they get a 4-up invuln, and then it's like, who even cares that I lost Armor of Contempt? Dark Angels is...
They went from who are Dark Angels to, Dark Angels.
Oh, they're all in Devastator Doctrine all game, shooting me with mostly heavy weapons and getting 2 points per kill, and they move 23 inches and shoot me.
Just when you forgot about them.
The Talon Master moves 21 inches, can advance and shoot, and if you give him Arbiter's Gaze, always hits on a 2 with a million shots that are Strength 2, ignores cover.
It sounds like it's time for my 60 Rangers in my Craftworld army.
It's like, what if the precision of the Hunter Cold Star was better, basically?
No.
Yeah.
Well, we got some more super chats. Appreciate all of you.
Ordering them inside S tier feels pointless. So,
it does.
Yeah, so we're just going to leave S tiers 1 glom, and we're going to move on.
To the super chats.
Not
those ones.
No,
right there. Chaos Knights Infernal or Iconoclast. This is from Mike A. He's got 50 Swedish kronas. What is the most viable? So, if we're going to go Iconoclast, I really like the one that's just +2 wounds across your army, Herpetrax. I think there's like a definite value to just putting beef on your Chaos Knights and just being done with that. And then if you're going to go with Infernal, this is the one that damages yourself. I really like the one that actually allows you to move through models and walls as if they're not there. Chaos Knights, like every vehicle faction, really struggle with terrain and move blocks and those basic tactics that we teach in the War Room. And being able to just phase through them dramatically helps that problem. So it's like, do you want to double down and do what Knights do but better, or do you want to double down or go the other way and try to make your Knight army not actually play like a Knight army?
And in this meta, also Worthy Offerings.
Worthy
Offerings is a good idea because there's going to be a lot of vehicles, and you get +1 to hit monsters, vehicles, and characters. Mm-hmm. So I think that
would be an Iconoclast or variation as well.
Yeah.
Chaos Knights have a few critical decision points in which way you want to go with it, but a lot of them are viable. Yeah. And then we got Dominic Galanio. Sorry if I butchered that. $5 super chat. Can you give a shout out to my peeps at Brooklyn Strategists? They've been sitting all last night making their tea list in preparation for yours. Awesome, Dominic. I actually had been to the Brooklyn Strategist up in New York a couple times back when I lived in New Jersey. Great store. Used to be friends with the manager while I was up there. Love to see that you guys are making some tier lists in preparation for ours. Appreciate the support.
Love that. Love to see that. Absolutely. And I've been corrected. It's not 1,000,000 shots on the guy. It's actually 18. My bad.
18
on the Talon Master.
18, 1,000,000, same thing, really.
I'm putting Dark Angels up here. Armies that move fast generally do better than armies that don't.
Armies that don't move fast are Imperial Guard. They don't care that they don't move fast.
Yeah, Imperial Guard were probably going to be the best army in the game when they came out, and then the top 3 armies in the game got hammered down into shape. Warhammered down, you could say.
Warhammered. So we have a Guard tier list that really breaks down why Guard are so potent and desperately need some Elementarum FAQs. But long story short, they have incredible indirect firepower. They have very cheap, very effective vehicles that you basically can never stop from firing you because those overhead cannons can fire, the turret mounts can fire out of close combat. And they're super tough to kill. There's a lot of them. You can't deep strike on them full stop. And also there's this unit called Khazarkins.
Yeah, Khazarkins have a broken interaction. Do you want me to...
Just bring it down.
Yeah. Okay, so Khazarkins have 1,000,000... I've been corrected before. A lot of shots. You can give them rerolls to hit. You can give them rerolls to wound. You give them 6s to hit, count as 6s to wound. You then use a strat that says 5s to hit, count as 6s to wound. Then you use a strat that says 6s to wound or a mortal wound. And as I said, you give them reroll hits and wounds. You tell them to first rank fire, second rank fire, so they fire 3 shots out to 24 inches. Could be 28 if you take the upgrade. You can teleport them with the Barbican's Key after giving them all of these upgrades. If you have them near the finial of the Nemradesh first, they ignore hit penalties, so the heavy 3 becomes Who Cares 3. And then They ignore Feel No Pains, phase caps, and -1 damage for what that's worth. Now, so that means you can top this unit out and basically delete like 3 of whatever you want. Because basically you can pick 3 targets, 3.5 basically, and you do 6 mortal wounds to each and like 8 saves to each at AP2. And then they ignore Feel No Pains and phase caps. So the average is this unit hops out and kills 3 Custodes Dreadnoughts in 1 turn. Basically, if you're in the center of the board, you are dead. You are just dead. The amount of damage this unit puts out is pretty gross. Into one single target, it's just bad, right? Like, you're just going to take a lot of damage. But it can split fire and kill 3 things. And that's the point where it's, like, not okay anymore. Because you also back it up with, like, 6 Leman Russ, 9 Mortars, especially in the Arks of Omen detachment. My god, you get 6 heavy support slots without trying. So yeah, you get 6 Leman Russ, roughly 9 mortars, like 2 units of Casterkin, and a bunch of support. And that is very durable, has great secondaries, tables you very quickly, and unlike Iron Hands, you can mortar people to death. Mortars are very solid at killing just troops that could just hide on objectives. Like, very, very good at it. Kroot, die. Eldar, die. GSC, die. If it's not literally like a 3-up armor saving cover, it's probably dead.
Yeah, Astra Militarum, they need an FAQ. I'm just going to leave it there.
Yeah, they need 6s to hit, not count as 6s to wound. Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
They learned this with 5 armies before Guard, and then they were like, let's put it in on Guard. I'm sure it's fine.
It's got to be fine.
It's got to be fine.
You know what's maybe not so fine? Death Guard. So Death Guard did get some love. Their Plague Marines went down 2 points a model. You can now have 190-point units of 10 Plague Marines or 95-point units of 5. That is useful. They lost Armor of Contempt, so functionally, out of your 2,000-point list, you saved 10 points for every 5 dudes you took, and you lost a point of armor army-wide. Long story short, your army is more killable, and you probably gained about 5 models in it. This is not it, unfortunately. Death Guard, the game changed around them a lot more than they actually changed, but they were already not in a great spot due to their speed and their lack of datasheet options and just kind of their special rules you have to work very hard to pull off. And then on top of that, there's a lot of guns in the top tier of the game. Death Guard have a getting shot problem.
Yeah, Death Guard versus, well, I'm not going to put it even up close to S tier. Death Guard versus any of these, Eldar, Custodes is now like way worse than it was before because all the AP2 and 3 is now suddenly killing you.
Death Guard don't like Quins.
Yeah, Death Guard really hate Chaos Knights. They are fine into Blood Angels, but then 40-50 Melta Pistols is going to kill you very quickly.
They just really need to experience some love from Games Workshop, and I'm not seeing it.
Something. Like, they needed to keep Armor of Contempt more than anyone else. Honestly, it is with a heavy heart. They're also so sad. They're so slow that they don't get to influence the game very well. Like, no. You can't make up for it with player skill.
You're pretty much at the mercy of your opponent's skill with Death Guard. That's kind of what you were saying earlier. Death Guard don't allow you to play out of your situation, so when you play against someone who has maybe a skill advantage over you or knows how to use the speed issue that Death Guard present against them, there's no repercussion. There's no plan B. You're just letting them move fast around you.
Yeah. Basically, Death Guard will probably still do all right in mid-tables. They'll do fine. Not great, because they run into guns and they die, but they'll do okay at mid-tables. Top tables, they will not do well.
Look, we got a lot of Death Guard love in the chat, and I feel for you. I also have a Death Guard army. I love them. I think they are really cool. I think they deserve more love. I wish UW would give it to them, but for now, competitively speaking, I think we're gonna put them in C tier. We could put them in D tier, but there's nothing in C tier. Let's just move them later.
All right, fine. We'll move them as soon as the first army hits C tier.
Well, let's be reasonable here. D for Death Guard, I don't think so.
Yeah.
D for Drukhari, though. Drukhari's faction I can get behind.
Yes, Drukhari got a lot of love in the new meta. Not really because they got any buffs. They kind of like the new Arks of Omen detachment.
Oh, they love the new Arks of Omen detachment.
They love the new Arks of Omen detachment, but mostly it's because of Armor of Contempt was like real not great for Dark Eldar, and now they go back to doing what they do best, which is killing Marines.
Well, so here's the thing, right? There's a lot of Marines in the meta. Drukhari, you're like, good, we're good at that. There's no Armor of Contempt in the meta. Drukhari, we're like, we were not good at that. Witches came back down. You know what's really good at killing Space Marines again? Witches. And one of the biggest challenges Drukhari faces is their secondary game. Oddly enough, for an army that's hyper fast and mission playing, they had a mediocre secondary game because they had no access to Psykers. They have great secondaries in Battlefield Supremacy because they're super fast, and Herd the Prey is awesome. You could maybe find a kill one depending on your opponent. And then like Banners and R&D was always okay. That third one was always very shaky and required you to kill your opponent, which was challenging in an Armor of Contempt world. Now, forget that third one. You take your Patrol of Harlequins, it's free. You unlock your Psychic secondaries. Bada boom, bada bing. You can now play your entire Drukhari half of the game from your half of the board if you want, viably with Herd the Prey, like Warp Ritual or Interrogation, and Banners. So that's a fundamental stylistic change for how Drukhari play.
Yes, you get Psychic secondaries now, and you just didn't before.
You could have, of course, taken a Harlequin Patrol in your Drukhari detachment, but this is where I say the Arks of Omen detachment really does them justice, because you had to spend 2 CP for Patrol. Drukhari need to spend all their command points in characters, because otherwise...
Like, what does your army do?
They don't do damage. So now you can spend all your command points in characters and take Psychic secondaries, and there's no Armor of Contempt. Glorious days. They still don't like being shot.
They don't like being shot, but they're good at avoiding like Iron Hand style shooting, not good at avoiding Dark Angel style shooting. The reason we're saying that Arks of Omen is like good is because you can take a real space raid. Now Drazar cannot be your warlord in that.
I'm good with that.
I'm fine with that because I like giving Hatred Eternal to... I like taking Drazar, and I like taking Hatred Eternal Jinblade Archon, so you spread out your damage. They all still hit really hard. Mm-hmm. And this way you can take a Patrol of Harlequins with some really good characters in there, and characters that enable you to have another secondary, which is something that you needed desperately.
One of the reasons to include Drazar, aside from his beat stickiness, is the aura for +1 to wound on Incubi to help you with your anti-tanks. You know what also kills tanks really well? Test of skill, Witch Cult. Like, that's perfectly fine instead.
And people are saying in chat that Corsairs unlock Psychic secondaries. They do not. You need to be a character.
You do need to be a character to perform those psychic actions. But it was a good thought.
Good idea.
I will toss with my magical wand. Drukhari seem to be better than the armies in B tier, and maybe like the bottom of A tier. Top of B, bottom of A, somewhere in there.
So like there-ish?
I think there is perfectly reasonable. I think they can hang with Harlequins and Custodes, to be honest, and Eldar. I really do.
I feel like Harlequins have the edge there, but, I mean, who cares about the one particular matchup? I think they are roughly similar in power level, for sure.
Well, we can leave them there.
Yeah.
So then we've got Mr. Old Deathwatch. This army didn't get any points reductions whatsoever, and it got nerfed, right?
Yeah, they just nerfs.
No.
Yeah, it's very hard to tell where Deathwatch are going to end up, because they get a lot of stuff for free. They have 27-point veteran, not intercessors, veteran, just veterans. Yeah, just veterans. 27-point veterans who can get all their war gear for free, pretty much, Thunderhammers and whatnot, notwithstanding. And then you can add Terminators in there who get 10-point Cyclone missile launchers. I think the unit's like 280 for 8 of them. It's pretty good. You can put a lot of missile shots down range. They're a good troop unit. There's going to be a lot of combos in Deathwatch that are very interesting to try and figure out. The ability to put Thunderhammer, Storm Shield, Terminators on any unit you want functionally keeps Armor of Contempt, because you didn't get Armor of Contempt on Storm Shields, and you didn't get it anyways. Now you have +1 to your save, which is functionally the same as -1 to your incoming AP. You can stand in cover, so that really negates all the AP too, and you're standing in front of 5 squishy dudes. So yeah, that's a pretty powerful unit. As far as what the rest of Deathwatch do, not 100% sure. They have access to the entire Space Marine catalog, which is pretty good, and they have a good suite of buffs. So I think they're going to come in outside of like Iron Hands and Dark Angels that have some like pretty good things that happen when they sit in Dev Doctrine all game. I think Deathwatch are going to end up being like the best of the rest.
Yeah, I agree. I think Deathwatch giving tons of free stuff on their kill teams is absolutely phenomenal, but they don't present the raw points efficiency stat brokenness that other factions present, or other legions present.
Yeah, well, they don't benefit from the Dev Doctrine change, whereas these two get all the free stuff and all that, and then they do benefit from the Dev Doctrine change much more, whereas Deathwatch gets to sit in Dev Doctrine and gets a bunch of free stuff, which is great. Probably going to put them up here somewhere.
I think top of A ahead of Chaos Knights is perfectly fine.
Yeah, but we haven't figured out the combos yet. Like, really, past that one unit that's just like cheaper than
building
it
the
should
actual
be.
list is definitely
It's hard.
yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. So it could be that after trying to build lists and finding out that maybe there's fewer combos than we thought, like they come back down to here, which is totally fine.
A tier is good.
Yeah, I think A
Into
tier
the
is
A tier.
perfectly fine. Let's talk. Grey Knights.
Grey Knights. They're an army close to Mr. Siegs' heart. They got a
Yes.
lot better. He's very excited about them.
Close to my heart too.
to your
They were
heart.
my first GT I won once I started with Art of War.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
I too have dabbled in the Grey Knights. They have gotten a lot better with the Armor of Contempt going away. They struggled to basically do any damage in shooting to any of the Space Marine legions.
Yeah, you're talking about with the Dread Knights, right? Because the Dread Knights didn't benefit from Armor of Contempt at all, and their shooting was mass AP 1 and 2, so you basically saw Dread Knights leave all of Grey Knight lists once Armor of Contempt came out.
Right. So Dread Knights got a lot better, but even just Bolters got a lot better with it too, because you will start to see units that basically Bolters are vulnerable, or Bolters are good against, enter the meta.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think Grey Knights have transitioned back to being an act in every phase kind of army, whereas like in the past 6 months or so, they've been a shooting, or they've been a combat and psychic army that happened to have guns slapped onto them. I think they got net better because of their diversity and the fact that they're still just really good at scoring points.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Grey Knights, honestly. Their secondaries are really good.
Yeah.
Honestly. I don't know why Teleport Assault
Got better.
Got better.
It was already like a 12 to 15.
Yeah, it was pretty good, but now it's you started the Codex, it was 3 points. If at the end of a turn you killed an enemy unit with something that either arrived from Deep Strike reserves, was teleported with Gate of Infinity, or teleported using their teleporter. And then it went up to 4, and now it's 5. So that's just like a 15. That's just happening. If you try to make it happen, you can try 4 times, miss once, and you still get a 15. That's pretty ludicrous. You can make a lot better lists now, I think, than before Armor of Contempt, which really pigeonholed you. You can get like 4 Dread Knights. I mean, I've made the list basically. You get 4 Dread Knights, you know, a Grandmaster Dread Knight with all the sauce, plus 3 others. Teleporters became free, so they functionally went down 10 points, which is awesome. You get all of that, 30 Interceptors, 3 units of Strikes, the Super Librarian, and with Redeploy for 3 core units, and you get a Tech Marine with the upgrade. You get all of that, and you have still like 20 points floating. You still have 20 points left to use. That list sounds awesome. You have Purifying Ritual, because you have all those units that are not really casting powers, who can stand on objectives and do them again, which the Terminator build just straight up does not have. They don't have the units to do it. So you get Purifying Ritual back as this like great secondary that you have access to. You have Teleport Assault, which is an awesome secondary as well, and then you can do whatever you want for that last one, like just whatever you feel like. It's probably a good idea, banners, something like that.
Grey Knights also just do really well into Xenos factions across the board. The fact that every dude just happens to have like a Stormbolter attached to him, or a real quantity firepower, it destroys things like Eldar, Harlequins, Demons, Drukhari. Being able to teleport or smite away their screens in the psychic phase, then teleport to the spot that screens were occupying and get line of sight to something important and blast it away with the Dread Knight. Really, really strong.
Really very, very, very strong. I think they unquestionably went up in terms of power, but here's a stealth buff for them.
Stealth buff?
Would you like a stealth buff?
Like a stealth suit?
Almost. Thousand Sons are no longer the best army in the game. And when Thousand Sons are the best army in the game, people start getting real leery about taking a Psyker.
Right, because Wrath of Magnus is like, oh, you took a Psyker for your own psychic ritual? I'm going to use that against you for a free 15.
Yep, I'm going to get a free 15 on a secondary, and then you can't, if you wanted to, you can't take a Pour the Witch. When Thousand Sons are the best army in the game, people, if they have the option of taking 1 Psyker or 0, they take 0. Like, just most of the time. Well, now that Thousand Sons got nerfed fairly extensively, people are not going to be feeling that way. Also, Wrath of Magnus, it's gone.
Yeah.
There is no Wrath of Magnus anymore. So people who could take a Psyker, well, they will now.
Yeah. And
what that means is that your opponents will not have... they won't have a Pour the Witch against you. nearly as often as they would before. So that is actually a very big buff. Your opponent most of the time just won't have a 15 secondary in their back pocket.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think Kabor the Witch was a free 15 versus Grey Knights at all, just because of how durable they were. But that is a nice buff, and it means Thousand Suns in the head-to-head won't be able to take Wrath of Magus.
It wasn't a free 15 against the Terminator variant, but it was a free 15 against the 30 Interceptor, strikes, all of that. That one I played, and that one was like an average of a 13 when my opponents took it.
I think Grey Knights are solidly an A tier. I actually think they're like in that Chaos Knight, Deathwatch, Black Templar area.
I think they're like up here. I mean, I think when you get into the weeds of exactly, I've said this before, exactly where a faction is in that tier, I think you get a little...
We're not doing it.
Yeah, we're just not doing it.
But we can put them in an area.
Yeah, they're roughly there. I think they're in a very good place right now, honestly. Their scoring is great. Their firepower came back. They're mobile. They're maneuverable. I'm actually very excited about Grey Knights.
You know what else I'm excited for? Devin's $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Devin. How often are you taking a free heavy weapon on Grey Knight squads, and which weapons? I think you leave it at home. Well, you want the swords and the Stormbolts. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I honestly think you're back to halberds, but mix in some swords there just in case your opponent gets froggy and wants some AP3 action. You're here to provide.
Do a little bit of both. But you have a gun already. Swapping your gun for a slightly better gun in no combat, I think is a nerf.
I think it is. And also, if they're a heavy weapon, you're hit on 4s now, which is like Terminators keep their weapon. That one you probably upgrade. On Paladins, Paladins you definitely upgrade. Terminators you do. Terminators went down in cost. Paladins did not. Incredible. Yeah, I think you take heavy weapons on Terminators, and I think on Purgation squads you do as well. And then on anyone else, you just leave it at home.
So now we've got the Gene Stealer cult.
We're going to disagree a little bit on this one. I can sense it, and that is okay.
It is okay.
That is okay.
Jax, you loving Gene Stealer cult. You're all of a sudden a Gene Stealer cult player, apparently.
Well, I was back in 8th edition for like a year and a half.
Right.
Yeah, I think they've gotten... I think before these changes... You could take Gene Stealer Cult, but you were taking your life into your hands. Because if you took Gene Stealer Cult and you ran into this bad boy, the Thousand Suns plus Flamers would rock your world. And it would be bad. And Thousand Suns plus Flamers were the best army, so if you want to win an event, you could run into it. So it was just a bad idea, meta-wise. A lot of the top armies were just, not great for Gene Stealer Cult. And a lot of the top armies got nerfed pretty extensively. And I think now it's Gene Stealer Cult's time to shine. They score very, very well, and on a drop turn, you can hit quite hard. You make your opponent's brain overload with where you can go, and where you can show up, because you can show up 6 inches away, one unit can show up 3 inches away. I know that Eric Lathuris has been on an absolute tear with the army. I know that there's one other person, 2 other people or whatever, and it's a very high skill cap army. It's a very high skill cap army, but I think in the meta right now, it's poised to shine. And it also got a bunch of free war gear, which is very nice.
Yeah, I think GSC had a few more problems in the previous meta than just Thousand Suns. Most of the armies in the game, actually, I found very problematic. Eric was able to pull up some awesome results. I have not seen anyone besides the Magic Oracle himself been able to replicate anything like it. But, we are doing this as maximum potential. That said, I don't know. I don't really see what changed for them aside from Armor of Contempt and a few points drops here and there. Armor of Contempt going away is great for them. They have a lot of AP2 and AP- firepower, AP1. They love to apply it, and Space Marines were largely immune. Now they're not. But unfortunately, there's way more Space Marines on the table, and every Space Marine army in the game is just going to pack infiltrators. Astra Militarum exist. Let's just leave that aside. I still think they're going to struggle with armies like Tau and the other hyper shooting ones. And Votann.
Anthony has actually brought me around to the idea that they beat Tau up, which I think is true. Having played Tau, I know I'm scared of what they bring to the table.
Where do you want to put them in this?
So I do agree infiltrators are a problem. The person I was thinking of when my brain short-circuited was Innes Wilson. He has also been doing very, very well with them. I think GSC do well because they score well. I also think they're well poised into a meta that is focused on tanks and anti-tank when you have 80 models that come back 2d6 every turn that can't be wounded on 2. I think if your opponent's overload on anti-tank, I think you punish them super hardcore. I agree, infiltrators are a problem. So, and I think guard is an issue. I think there are still some issues at the top end, but I think they I don't think they were ever D, but I think most of the time, if they're just very punishing, unless you're literally Eric Lathers or Innes Wilson.
So where are we putting them?
I think we can put them like here-ish.
I will agree with that.
I
thought you were going to put them in A, and then I was going to blow a gasket, but I'm fine with them in B.
I haven't played with them yet in the new thing. Theoretically, I've spent a lot of time, hours and hours talking to Anthony about them. I think they have the potential to be up in here, but I'm not willing to say it yet without having put them on the table.
Yeah.
Get over it. There we go.
Okay. So then this brings us to the glorious, glorious Imperial Fists.
The glorious Imperial Fists. Yeah, I mean, all right, let's list off the positives. Now let's list off the negatives.
They're Space Marines.
No, the positives are in a tank meta, they do get +1 damage on their anti-tank weapons. Mm-hmm. As long as they're strength 8 or more. Maybe it's 7 or more. Maybe I'm confusing with Ramshackle. But you have to hit a strength threshold for it to work. Fine. But they get +1 damage to their anti-tank weapons. Love that. Love that. They're not best poised to exploit that. And I'd rather have Iron Hands, honestly, do the rerolls. So that's, that is what I'd rather have if I'm going mass anti-tank, would be I'd rather have the reroll ones, the 6-up feel no pain. Still, Imperial Fists are like, they're a lot better, for sure. You can take a lot of heavy weapons, you can take a lot of high strength anti-tank weapons, and you will do well if you pair into the right matchups. But I think anything they do, Iron Hands or Death Watch or Dark Angels or Black Templars or whatever, it's just going to do better. I mean, that's kind of the Imperial Fist way. Meta-wise, I think I'm going to put them from get out of here tier to like...
They're still Space Marines. They are worse than other Space Marine chapters, but relative to the rest of the game, they are still Space Marines.
Yeah.
I think it'd be criminal not to put them in B.
Yeah, okay, all right. They're definitely worse than Blood Angels.
That's fine. They're just not in the same category as Death Guard.
Yeah, they got a lot of points drops, but I think they're the ones who are feeling it most, where it's like, we got points drops, but all of our units got harder to, easier to kill.
Well, it's, every Legion of chapter of Space Marines got points drops. They all got the same treatment, except Imperial Fist didn't really get anything extra, where a lot of them got extra value.
Yeah.
Brad Herman with a lovely $5 super chat. Do you guys believe Centurion Devastators are viable in the most competitive sense in Iron Hands now, or are they too overshadowed by other choices?
What do you think, Nick?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't really rate a unit that moves 4 inches and shoots stuff too highly. I think it's very easy to play around. They're durable. They're decent in close combat. They have a lot of firepower. So all that's good. It kind of synergizes with the army. I've used, actually, Centurion Devastators I've used Assault Centurions in Iron Hands to be a little bit of a firepower counterpunch. I think that would still be useful. But if you're going to take a shooting unit for the sake of this thing just shoots a ton, I think it needs to be more mobile. Otherwise, your opponent will have too easy of a time playing around it.
Yeah. And +1 damage, Matt O does have value into the guard meta, but it's just... I would much rather just be Iron Hands.
Well, you're basically,
they're very monodimensional.
The +1 damage only applies to slow few weapons. It's strength 7 or higher, so it's like, or strength 8 or higher, which is like
it's strength 7. The chat confirmed for us.
Okay, so like autocannons gets better, which is reasonable. Suppressors get a lot better, but aside from that, like you're not really buffing your army. Whereas Iron Hands gives every model in your army reroll once to hit.
Yeah. I mean, sure, they are good in a vehicle meta. But you're also going to have to play things that aren't vehicles. And then Imperial Fists are like, oh, I was not ready for this. Also, they're just not as durable as Iron Hands, not as durable as Black Templars. So, like, that's why I put them down here. They're very monodimensional.
All right. You know what is also maybe monodimensional, but I'm so shockingly not? Imperial Knights. They have the same problems as Knight armies, which is why I say they're monodimensional. But they can do a lot. They firepower... very, very big firepower.
Yes.
They're tough. They're pretty tough. You can make Imperial Knights like, why are you so hard to kill? They could be 8 models OBSEC on an objective per armature. And it's like, why are you here? So tough on my objective. This is very bad.
Yeah, you can definitely go second into Knights, have a bunch of them suddenly, grow a 4-up invuln -1 damage, run onto the objectives, and you're like, oh, you are just getting a 12 this turn. Like, there's just not much I'm going to do about that. I mean...
Having the one knight also that just shoots mortal wounds if you roll 6s can be super strong. Even on a little baby armature, it's really powerful.
Yeah, it is, for sure. Even baby armature, you spend 2 CP and you're like, oh, look at that. I rolled like a couple 6s. You're dead.
We played a test game the other day. I had like the super hard to kill Lord of Change in my demon army versus John's Knights. And his whole army shot and did about like 6 damage to my Lord of Change. And then that knight shot and did 7. the one that does mortals. So, screw that guy. I think this is like right next to Chaos Knights. I'm a Chaos boy at heart, so I'm putting them below. But, teach them that.
I honestly think Imperial Knights are a little better because they have better secondaries. It doesn't particularly matter. They have so different matchups between the two of them.
Which is really interesting for a Knight army.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Yeah.
But Helverins are super good into Armor of Contempt Gonland. Like, AP 2, damage 3, plus, like, 300s of Beast Helverins are, like, here. Like, honestly, that one unit is just right there as a something you can add into any Imperial army. 0 CP now, so there's no reason not to do it. If that's a unit you want in your army, you can just take it. And that unit is phenomenal. But also, it's just it's like, Helverins are just good units now. Like, they were good before. Little situational, because into Armor of Contempt, in cover, they did nothing. But now they do a lot into Armor of Contempt.
You know what doesn't do nothing? Zoltan Lukács 1000 HUF super
chat. Yeah, I'm
chat.
not getting you on that, sorry.
I only have 9 Black Knights and a Vengeance. I have a lot of Greenwing. What else can I take as a Dark Angel player? Recommendations?
All right, so as a Dark Angel player, if you want to go more Ravenwing, which I think is good, you probably want Samael and a Talon Master, and maybe some Storm Speeders, some more Vengeances, stuff like that. If you want to take Greenwing, I think it's going to be Plasma and Scepters are going to be your biggest thing, and then like Devastator squads with plasma cannons are very, very strong. Aggressors are at a great point right now. You can take a unit of Deathwing Terminators, so they're just Thunderhammer, Storm Shield, being stupid and obnoxious on objectives. You can definitely take that. You have a lot of options, I think, but all of that would be good.
Yeah, appreciate your support, Zoltan. So that brings us to Necrons. This is an army that was like ludicrously good for a time and then dropped off the face of the earth out of literally nowhere. I think a lot of people kind of turned up the damage in their army to kill Necrons really effectively so they couldn't get ahead on their points factory. And then that's really why you saw Necrons not competing as much. Also, it's kind of a boring play style in my opinion. But
It is.
But Necron's still super strong. How do they change?
So you can no longer get the pregame move alongside the OBSEC. You just can't do that anymore.
It takes
which
a turn off their tempo.
Very quickly. It takes a lot off their tempo. It also means they can't deploy their army on the line, and if they go second, go back behind terrain, and if they go first, go forward and then move.
They've got to commit.
And that feels pretty good. I think it's Nylok, who has OBSEC and a different trait as well, instead of just OBSEC. Yeah, something like that. Because OBSEC across your whole army, great. No questions asked. They took a little bit off the top of the secondaries, not a ton. They took, you can't score Purge the Vermin turn 1, so that takes about 3 points off of your total there. Not bad. And then you don't have the pregame move, so it's a lot harder to get the action secondary, Ancient Machineries. And then Treasures of Aeons got weaker in kind of a meme-based way, where it's like, oh, you're still getting a 15 on it, but, you only get 4 points for holding 3 of the midfield objectives instead of 5, but you're still hitting a 15, so who cares? That one got nerfed in a way that doesn't really matter, but 3 points off the top of Purge the Vermin is great, and then having no pregame move, I think Necrons are in a good place right now. I don't think they need to hit them anymore. I think we're solid. They were the best army in the game because they could just score an 100 or a 97 or whatever, no matter what happened, and I think that's gone. Now, they are suffering a little bit from Iron Hands and Imperial Guard, Black Templars too, Knights of both varieties. Just kill them really fast.
I really think this is a B tier army now.
I think so. Yeah. I think it's like top of B because it scores real good. Probably scores less good than GSC now, honestly.
You and I have such different opinions of GSC. We really do.
Yeah, I know.
One of us has played it. Then we've got a $2 super chat from Kachi. Is 40k more of a skill or knowledge-based game? What a great question. I think they're two sides to the same coin is the right answer. There is no point in being skillful at 40k if you don't know what stuff does. And there's tons of players who read 40k like it's a textbook or a manual, memorize the rules, and have no idea what to do with that knowledge. Combining the two is really how you can find success at the game.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick one for the sake of your question, there is no point in being skillful if you don't know what anything does.
Yeah. That's basically the base level of work you need to get in, and then then it's skill based from there on out.
Great way to learn the game a lot faster and then also learn what to do once you have that knowledge is subscribe to the War Room, where we literally teach you how to play this game more competitively and not only just like tournament 40K, but also how to enjoy more of your hobby and get better at the game as a conceptual thing.
All right, we have a $5 super chat from Joey Laguna. Says, with Hail of Doom and the new Arks of Omen detachments, do we now fill our 3 elite slots with Dire Avengers and just not take Banshees anymore?
Well, it depends very much how you want to build your Eldar list. I'm going to play Hail of Doom later on this week in the War Room, and I'll be using an elite slot Arks of Omen detachment. So I'll have double Banshees and Scorpions and 3x10 Dire Avengers. So I kind of get it all. I sacrifice like fast attacks or heavy supports to do this, but I think that's an okay trade-off. I've also written lists that are all combat-based, which is just like 3 units of Banshees, 3 units of Scorpions, and then screw the Avengers. There's so many viable ways to build an Eldar list right now. I think you could totally skip Banshees and Scorpions and just run Avengers, but there really is not many better combat options you have access to, so if you want to participate in the combat phase, you really need to dedicate elites to it.
Yeah.
Appreciate your super chat, Joey.
All right. Admech. They were up here on release in S tier. They were broken for a while. Still broken. They're still broken.
They are still broken. No. Everyone knows that. It's a well-known fact. They've been broken since 2016.
Yes. They were in a rough spot, for sure. They got better. They got a 5-up invuln across the board, but they lost their veteran cohort. And not across the board, but to a lot of their units. They lost their veteran cohort, which is a big deal. Just it timed out, As of January, it became not rules in the game. They got a much better secondary. They got core on their cataphrons, and they got points drops across, on a lot of their units. I think Admech they're a decent army now. It's hard to say. They're very complicated. Literally no one except Richard Siegler knows everything that's in the book. Mm-hmm. I think that's just where we're at. So I think they got a lot better. They moved up from, one of the lowest win rate armies in the game to probably somewhere around here. They have better scoring, which is essential if you want to be a good army. And, they got a lot cheaper, and they lose veteran cohorts. They lost advance and charge, which kind of sucks for them. But they got a lot of stuff in exchange.
They also benefit a lot from certain mechanics of the meta shifting overall. Armor of Contempt going away means their firepower is a lot more effective into Space Marine and those types of factions. And then they also have a lot of mechanics to ignore AP1 and AP2 off the bat. And if people are going to be taking more AP1 and AP2 weapons, much like Iron Warriors gets better, Admech also get better through that virtue.
Yeah. I do want to actually in a second just move some of this stuff around. Probably when we get to the end.
Let's do it at the end.
Yeah, we'll do it at the end.
Let's do it at the end. I want to talk about Zlack Onion's $5 super chat. Loving this GSC argument to lead into the grudge match tomorrow. 2 3-armed men enter, only 1 leaves. Flash Gits.
Flash Gits are the one that leaves.
Love your super chat, Zlack Onion. Thank you.
How many arms do Flash Gits have again? Yeah, I think the difference is I think they might have the potential to be up here, but I haven't tested them. I think you think they're down here. I think we just met in the middle, and I think we're both happy with somewhere in this vicinity.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Orks.
Let's talk about Orks. They did get a lot better. Thing they lost biggest and the best, which was a good secondary. I took it all the time. Hated taking it because it was so obnoxious keeping my warlord all the way back. And if I lost him, it would, it was rough, but I would take it because it was a free 10 points. And if they tried to do anything about it, it became a free 14 points. Anyway, I'm kind of glad it's gone because I don't want to have to take it.
Yeah.
But everything else in Orks got better. Arks of Omen detachment is just better for them, honestly, because now you get 1 extra CP basically. It's easier to make your characters sing.
And Armor of Contempt going away really just helps your damage output because Orks were actually quite pillow-fisted into Space Marines.
Yeah, they had some issues into some of the really Armor of Contempt-y armies. Choppas basically did not do anything. You know how it says a Choppa and then it has a stat line? Yeah, you could ignore that. AP1 Choppas with extra attacks and high strength, I think, is real again. Their scoring is still very, very good. They made get the good bits better for some reason. It can't get more than 15 points, so functionally it didn't get better because you were getting 15 either way. But you now get 15 in 3 turns.
So I think Orks are awesome right now. They still struggle versus oops, I got blown up in my deployment zone.
Yes.
Right now it's a gun-heavy meta at the top over there, so that's only going to exaggerate the issue for Orks. But I do think Orks going first can run over even a Dark Angels or an Iron Hands army.
Yes, they certainly can. And then a Death Skulls list that people have been experimenting with, I think, is very, very good. You get a lot of bodies, you get a lot of amazing scoring, and you can actually hide. And free strategic reserves really helps that build out, too, because you can condense your footprint down to whatever terrain that you have. And so if you don't get blown up turn 1 by Iron Hands, your scoring is kind of ludicrous.
I don't think Orks are really great into most of the A-tier armies. Now that I'm looking at what's actually in A-tier, I think Death Watch are going to beat them up pretty bad. Both the Knight options are pretty good in Orks.
I've played the Knights into Orcs game, and I think it's pretty good for Orcs.
Oh, yeah?
They kill Knights very fast.
I could see that. Yeah. I just think Knights shoot and Orcs die, and then the Chaos Knights also pose the problem of dread tests.
Knights' best shooting is Strength 7, which goes down to damage 2.
Imperial
into the
Knights
vehicles. Imperial Knights for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can get a little squirrely, but generally I think it's a fairly good matchup for the Orcs.
Okay, you want to put them in A-tier? That's cool.
Yeah, I think so. Their scoring is just good, and then their choppas.
Yeah,
they're in here somewhere. Again, we're not trying to.
It's so polarizing because if you take the Goth build, you're so skewed on whether or not you're going first into whether or not this match is going to be fine or not fine. Versus the guns. And then the Death Skulls, I don't know too much about it, so I'll not comment there.
They basically just score real good. Yeah, that's what they do.
We got a lot of love in the chat going on. So we've got Lexi157 with AOC gone. I feel like non-termy bricks in CSM have to switch to Zinch over Slanesh for the infil. Works for me. I was using Bike's thoughts. I probably would leave Terminators at home, to be honest. I find their move 5 really, really not great in the first place, and then giving them +1 invul, it definitely helps, but without that feeling of pain, you're really vulnerable to damage 3 weapons. You're functionally playing like Scarab Terminators that don't shoot as hard or teleport, and that's unimpressive.
I think they're talking about non-termy bricks, so like regular infantry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, in that case, then totally. I actually agree in 100%. Marcus Zinchit's where it's at. I'm thinking about taking a 9-man bike unit in my Chaos list with Black Rune, and then make it Zinch, put a 4-up invul, blank the first save, heal a guy. That's still very viable. It gets around the speed issue you pose.
Is it a 5-up invul?
It's a 4-up.
Wow.
Then you get the chain cannons with AP2 with Zinch just everywhere. That's awesome. They're free. That's awesome. Just spamming that out. 9 Warriors. I love that build.
Yeah, that build seems pretty strong for sure.
We've got Orange Trees with the $5 super chat. How do you all feel about Black Knight Dark Angel list?
We feel this right here up in S
tier. Right here in S tier.
We feel that.
I think that's definitely a super strong one.
Yeah.
Matt O with a $10 super chat. Is this just that everything in the open dies meta? Also hoping my sisters can just eat up this power armor is S/A tier, even with secondary nerfs. Thanks for the streams.
It is and it isn't. So 40k has kind of, for the last edition or two, kind of been the best defense is not getting shot, right? Like, if an opponent wants a unit dead, they're going to get it dead if they can apply their damage to it. But it's more about how you survive is about either quantity, so like a durable unit is not just this unit will live through my opponent's turn no matter what they do. That almost never happens. It's more like
how much
this
does it take?
Exactly. Like if this takes up most of my opponent's turn to kill, but they kill it, and then I have 5 other things that they need to deal with. It's about establishing enough problems for your opponent to solve that they can't solve them all. But things in the open are going to die faster than ever, I think, in this meta.
I would say that the very traditional way of playing the game, which is like put a rhino full of dudes on the line and hope it gets across the table, that's never going to work.
It never did, really.
It worked in like 5th, but it's been a while.
it's been a bit.
So, yeah, in that traditional sense, you definitely... If you're in the open, you're dead. But there are ways to threat overload if you're in the open. I love using reserves to play like a null game on turn 1 where I'm just hiding like half of my army and then my opponent can't really see anything. And then on turn 2, half of my army runs out from behind the walls and then half my army shows up from out of reserve, hits some charges, and really mess with my opponent's army. You could, especially with strategic reserves being free now, you can really make some beta strike viable options to avoid the alpha strikes that armies A, B, and C Guard, Dark Angel, and Iron Hands up there are trying to blow you up with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great question, though. And then John Ruiz with a $5 super chat with Armor of Contempt gone. Are Blade Guard veterans viable substitutes for Terminators?
Not really, unfortunately. Blade Guard veterans kind of got left behind by all this. They never got Armor of Contempt, so they're functionally the same. Except Thunderhammer Stormshield Terminators are 33 points a model now, and they functionally do have Armor of Contempt because they have a 2-up with +1 to their save.
They're very similar models, like 3 wounds, combat Space Marines walk at the same speed more or less. Just one of them is simply better than the other, which is really sad.
It is unfortunate that Terminators with Armor of Contempt were better, and now Terminators after Armor of Contempt are better.
But to your question, John, they are substitutable. Like, if you don't own Terminators, you don't want to get them, you want to use Blade Guard, they will fill the same role. Terminators just do a better job at that role.
Yes.
Michael, with a $7 Canadian super chat, with Dev Doctrine changes, should combat Marine armies lean more into heavy weapons until Assault Dock hits instead of hiding for 2 turns? I don't think so. I think if you're going to play a combat Marine army like White Scars or Blood Angels, I mean, I should defer to Jack here, but I think you lean into what makes that army good.
Yeah, I think it depends on the army. Like, White Scars, I think, has close range shooting from Inceptors, that sort of thing, and then relies on the melee, like Aggressors and things of that nature. I think Blood Angels could have a build. I don't think you're going to have a viable army where you are a shooting army until it hits Assault Doctrine, now you're an Assault army. That switch is never going to happen. You need to take your game plan from turn 1 to turn 5. Mm-hmm. But what you can do is take a shooting Blood Angels army. I've not built this yet. It is very different from what we currently take. You take a shooting Blood Angels army. It is going to be worse than Imperial Fists at doing that, Black Templars, Iron Hands, basically all of the Marine chapters. It's going to be worse at shooting than those. But what you do have is some of the best doctrine manipulation in the game, right? In Space Marines. You can put 1 unit into Assault Doctrine for free and a second one for 1 CP. So what you can do is you can make a shooting army that stays in Devastator Doctrine the whole game, and you have like 4 combat units or whatever, and you just rely on your Sanguinary Priests to put them in Assault Doctrine when you need them to be. Mm-hmm. And so you are a shooting army that's worse than any other Space Marine shooting army, but you have the best counterpunch out of the whole lot. As a general rule, I don't think that list is going to be amazing, but I'm interested to put it on the table because it functions very differently to a lot of the other shooting Marine lists.
All right, we got many more super chats to go through. Dakota Templarius, how do you feel about Black Templar secondaries? Will also be which ones would you take as a general choice, and how about Impulse Sword Brethren combos?
All right, how do you feel about Black Templar secondaries? Well, there's some
just
grammatical stuff in there. Would you take as a general choice, and how about Impulsor, Sword Brethren bombs? I think Impulsors with Sword Brethren in them are great. I think, as a general rule, I would want to take troops in them, as fun as Sword Brethren are, because they're not OBSEC. And if you're standing next to an objective with your transport, with objective secured in the transport, it's going to be so much more annoying to kill the transport, because then you start getting 12s. That's why Harlequin boats are so obnoxious. Mm-hmm. You kill the boats, troops get out, they get a 12, and then they're like, thank you, I appreciate that. But Sword Brethren at 22 points a model is kind of criminal. Like, that's real cheap. I feel like I'm stealing them. Black Templar secondaries are going to be generic secondaries, honestly. The secondary where you have to kill more. So here's how it works. Here's how the Black Templar specific secondary works now. They got rid of the other ones. If you kill more in combat than your opponent killed in shooting and combat in a battle round, you get 4 points at the end of the battle round. That's not good. That's not great. It's also not how the current Black Templar lists are going to be skewing anyway. And then at the end of the game, if you take the good vow, what you have to do is you have to have an infantry unit that is not a character, that is above half strength in your opponent's deployment zone at the end of the game, and you get 3 points.
Yeah.
And the previous part about getting 4 if you kill more in combat than they killed shooting and combat, that caps at 12. Yeah, so that's not great. You're going to take the generic Codex Warfare, you're going to take Shock Tactics, and you're going to take Oaths of Moment, and you're going to like it.
So then another $5 super chat from Valones. Do you think Sisters, Argent Shroud, have become more interesting now following Armor of Contempt being removed? The Penitent entrance for 50 points trades well. I like Penitents at 50 points each. I think that's a pretty good vehicle for the price point. I don't think that advancing and shooting Sisters is ultimately that useful. I'd rather be useful in close combat and fighting more faces with Bloody Rose still.
Yeah, Argent Shroud also can't advance out of transports and count as stationary, which is the point where it's like, why are we taking this a lot of the time?
Do think Valorous Heart actually opens up a little bit, because again, having Armor of Contempt when everybody's teching for no Armor of Contempt is a nice counter meta thing, but you're still leaving combat at home, and I think that is really where Sisters shine as a faction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I could totally see Valorous Heart doing real good like it was before. Bloody Rose still good, and then the Penitent engines for 50 points. I think Mortifiers are real good right now. Like, I think they're just real good.
$5 super chat from Joshua Crawley. Thoughts on Hormigaunt Bomb List and Behemoth using strategic reserves, potential for 120 Strength 5 AP1 attacks out of a unit of 30 with Adrenal Glands. I don't know about this Behemoth Hormigaunt stuff. That's really a question for John. But I do know that John is trying Hormigaunts in Gorgon for the 4 poison all over my Eldar tomorrow, or Wednesday. Thursday. In the War Room. So really exciting match to catch there. We'll definitely... John, being the Tyranids aficionado over here, is going to be trying to figure out what exactly new Tyranids look like after the nerfs. So hopefully that'll give some insights.
Absolutely. We got Bam Jitsu with a $5 super chat.
Squirtle Squad for life.
And that one is actually $5.
Yeah, it's $4.99, Jack. Technically.
My bad.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, if you're going to correct me, 2 can play at this game. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So let's talk Raven Guard.
Let's talk Raven Guard. They snipe people.
They snipe people real good, and they can stay in attack doctrine the whole game. They got very cheap sniper scouts you can take 30 of them for 360 points with camo cloaks and snipers. You can strategic reserve them. You get a lot of cool stuff. I just don't know if all that stuff makes is an army that does good at 40k. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I think they do things in a different axis to Imperial Fists. So Imperial Fists just being worse Iron Hands is really going to hurt them, even if they're... Imperial Fists are not here because they have the +1 damage in the vehicles. There's a lot of vehicles.
I'm lost. We're on Raven Guard.
Right.
Sorry, yeah.
So Raven Guard and Imperial Fist both are just not as like directly beneficial as some of these other ones.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that the reason Imperial Fist would be down here if they didn't like directly counter vehicles. Raven Guard are weird. Like they're just strange.
They're up there because they're Space Marines, and Space Marines are this good as a faction because they don't cost that much.
I actually don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think it's like a big disagreement. I just think that the loss of armor of contempt really hurts some of the second stringer Marine armies, whereas some of these ones got massive benefits from the changes. But it's basically like Blood Angels used to be the best Marine army, now they aren't because they didn't get the biggest changes from they got lost armor of contempt and didn't benefit from a lot of the changes. And I think that's basically where Raven Guard are. They got a bunch of cheaper units, but they are also easier to kill. So you have to look at the things that their army did like agnostic to armor of contempt that got better.
I think I'm looking at it from a different perspective than you. I think to evaluate how good Raven Guard is, you take a look at the meta and see how many characters is my rule going to apply to and actually be beneficial. Because it's totally a spoiler type list. Like I'm +1 to wound versus characters. There's a lot of characters in the game. This is good. If there's not, then what does my faction do?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like going through it, not many characters that are critical in S tier that you can hide like a little rinky-dink character behind a wall. In A tier, I mean, like, Orks are pretty good in the character department. They got kill rigs, they got beast bosses. You really want to kill all those. But sniping Eldar characters is very beneficial and critical, but again, very hard because of walls. Harlequins, Custodes, their characters are hard to get to and do anything meaningful with.
Yeah, Custodes are just durable no matter what, and Harlequins are going to be in boats.
Now, Silent King, Demons, and Chaos Space Marines have amazing characters that you would love to trash all over with Raven Guard. Yeah. So I kind of think they belong in B tier where they're going to trash all those characters.
The problem is sure, they're not up in S tier, so my argument kind of falls apart. But Iron Hands trashes a lot of those characters harder.
Well,
they're not as good as Iron Hands.
I don't know what that has to do with anything.
It doesn't really. There we go.
Okay.
Sisters of Battle.
Sisters of Battle. They're a faction that got nerfed quite a bit, actually. And they weren't overly oppressive anyway, so that's interesting. They lost armor of contempt. Their secondaries got a little worse. Did they get points changes?
Yeah, they got.
Okay.
Repentia went up 2 points per model.
They deserved it.
Yeah, they got points changes.
Sisters, I think, are going to be struggle busting it a little bit. I
think so.
They really don't have much to do against the oppressive firepower aside from hope character protection somehow gets there. Against all of the A tier, I think they're just straight up outmuscled. And then they can be in B tier. I still think they're substantially better than Death Guard.
I mean, they are. I honestly think we're going to break this apart. Death Guard are going to come down, and then this is going to turn into ABC tier. But
perhaps. Well, actually, I don't know though, because I think a lot of the game is really healthy with itself. Like A and B can all just play against each other.
I just feel like some of these are really hanging on to this end of B. And
I think you're undervaluing how good being a Space Marine is. Like I played against John's White Scars, and forget all the special rules that White Scars bring to the table. The amount of bodies he had on the board was already too much of a challenge for a lot of factions.
For some factions, I think that's the case. But I think as soon as you start applying like concentrated gun to them, I think they do fall apart pretty quickly, unless they have the like some of the stupid things that some of the top end armies do.
Well, sisters don't have concentrated guns.
No, they do not.
So, I mean, you want to put them in C tier with that?
I mean, sisters are good at killing Marines. They always have been. They're really good at just cutting through their armor, just killing them en masse.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, they're like eviscerators are good at killing Marines, but and like multi-melters are okay at it. That's it. That's all they really have.
They have a lot of that, though.
They have a lot of that.
They have a lot of that. I mean, I don't think we're going to see sisters in A tier here.
Nope.
Like, not a shot.
Nope.
I think we're looking like somewhere in like this category.
I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Let's take a second and talk about Nurgle who's been a member for 2 months. When will CSM plus sub-factions be able to take Storm Shields? 10th edition choice for Storm Shields, baby. When, Nurgle I agree with you. Plague Marines need Storm Shields. W. Slappy with another $5 super chat. Super chat to gloat Chaos Knights over Imperial Knights. Where's your corpse god now? I agree with you. No, put that back. It was he super chatted for that.
He super chatted for the gloat.
Put it back.
I'll do it in a bit. Salamanders.
Yeah, don't be confused. This S is not for generic Space Marines. That's not actually a faction.
Yeah, it doesn't actually have any relevant. Like people talk about how good generic Marines are, and it's like that's not relevant.
Salamanders. So this, I think, are a great chapter. They do defensive Space Marines the best. They are very hard to charge with their Overwatch and encounter heroic 2d6 strat. They have a great defensive secondary in the I forget what it's called, but the one you get in the Arks of Omen book now is very good. It got better. And then on top of that, they have Armor of Contempt in a world where nobody else does, which I'm valuing
It's
really
like
high.
really weak Armor of Contempt, because Valorous Heart and Iron Warriors are both AP 2 and 1, get reduced by 1. Salamanders are AP 1 becomes 0, which is like a lot worse.
It's half of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they honestly are at the bottom of A tier, this faction. I think they are better than the Blood Angels and Fists and Raven Guard of the world because of how people were doing well with them. Not many, but the same Eric Lathir's argument applies. The people were doing well with them at the European Singles Championship. The guy got third with it. His name is being lost to me, but it's one of the French representatives. I believe the French captain now really piloted Salamanders before buffs to hyper success, beating Tyranids and all kinds of things like that. And now they just got better.
I mean, they did, and then they didn't. Like, I'm still yet to be sold on Armor of Contempt versus points drops. I think Armor of Contempt versus points drops and Dev Doctrine synergy and like Death Watch getting like insane amounts of free war gear, that I am sold on. But for example, I placed Blood Angels all the way like down here because I still am not 100% sure what the effects of that buff or nerf are. I don't know. I mean, Salamanders I would not put as higher than Blood Angels, but it was Olivier Weiss.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm friends with Olivier. I can't believe I blanked on his name. I'm sorry if you're watching this, but
you are
shout
right.
out to him.
There's a lot of Melta in the game right now, and you stay intact Doctrine the whole game. There's a lot of Flamers that you can take. You can take Flamestorm Aggressors for 30 ppm. That helps a lot. Now, they will die a lot faster, so I would personally take what's their second half? It's like the free wound reroll. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd take a Successors or if I wouldn't, because AP 1 to 0 is kind of niche.
I love their strats. I love their secondary. I think that is enough to be a good faction.
All right. Well, you were willing to hear me out on GSC. You want it here?
I want it there. I want it right there. Yeah. Let's do some Tau.
All right. Let's do some Tau. Tau definitely took a nerf out of this, but so did a lot of armies, and then they don't have to deal with Armor of Contempt. Now, they weren't that bad at cutting through Armor of Contempt, but they don't have to deal with it anymore, which is nice. They lost the planes, although you can still include the planes, and then they just deep strike in and shoot, same as if you were going second, but you lose the tempo if you go first, which is... A lot of the time, I would fly them off the board and bomb, and which you can no longer do anymore either, if I went first. Like, turn 1, I would just fly over, bomb, leave the board, and try and combo you turn 3. They drop in, shoot, and then turn 3, everything jumps you. You can still do that. Things went up in points. Their secondaries stayed the same, although generic secondaries got a little better. So if you're relying on generic secondaries, they got a little better. I'm not sure how to feel about Tau. I still think they're a good army, and I do think that they do decently into any of the non-absurd Marines. Like, I think they do well into I think anything where you put bodies on the board, Tau will just chew them up in like an insane rate.
Yeah.
Like I think Tau with the current builds that we're seeing can just like level Blood Angel, Salamanders, Raven Guard, Imperial Fists, and like that. I think they can still do a ton of damage to Dark Angels, Iron Hands, Deathwatch, Black Templars, but they have to mind the P's and Q's a little more. Into Guard, it's a rough game. You can kill them, but it's difficult. Like it's hard, and the onus is on you not to mess up. Knights, you can have a decent match into, but occasionally that game can spiral out of control. Trust me, it's happened.
Oh yeah.
Grey Knights probably do good into. Orcs, you should probably do well into. If you're building with any kind of indirect or anything into Tau, which I think you should be doing with Armor Content gone, you should pick up Eldar pretty fast. I don't know how to feel about them, honestly.
I think they have can win, can lose matchups versus the entirety of A tier.
Yes.
And they struggle versus S tier. They could win, but so can anybody punching up. I think they just belong in A tier somewhere.
I think they do. You still have control over your fate as the Tau player because you are faster. I'm going to put them right around there.
Right there is good. I like that.
Yeah. They still have control of their own fate because they're fast, they shoot hard, but I think you just can't mess up with Tau.
They're still terrifying.
Yeah.
We got a couple super chats. Labambarni, Bari. Sorry if I messed that up.
Labam Bam.
Labam Bam?
Yeah, that's just a mark on the screen.
Oh, interesting. $7.89. What a number. Thank you so much for your support. How many Blood Crushers will it take for demons to become A tier or other things? So I like Blood Crushers quite a lot right now. I played them last week and I was just shockingly impressed. I think 40 is fine for them. I think to really see Blood Crushers picking demons up and putting them on their back to victory, they'd have to drop to low 30s, 35 even. They need to run 15. But as it stands, I think demons are solid. The thing with demons that I really have not come to grips with is that there's such a disparity between the big monsters and the little monsters in that the little demons like Demonettes, Bloodletters and stuff, they really aren't going to scratch paint on tanks and things like that. And the big guys overkill the crap out of them. So if someone presents here's 12 vehicles to you, which is what that top of the tier list is, 3 big guys are going to be overstressed to lift the entire game on their back, and all your troops are useless.
Yeah, that is a real big issue that I've noticed.
So that's where I really want these medium Blood Crushers, Fiends to do something relevant, and that's where Flamers really solved your problems as demons. But Flamers coming down, the other guys coming up, it is kind of the right direction, because Flamers were too good, these guys were too bad. I just don't think it was enough just yet. It's a little more points. And then
more from Labam Bam.
Labam Bam with 678. Love your options for numbers here. Best ways for demons to play up to A/S tier. Great question. I'm brainstorming it right now. We're actually doing a state of the faction on demons in the one that's coming out next week. So this week later, I'll hopefully have my thoughts concluded on that. So to give you some basic premise, I'm really considering 15 fiends to try with Infernal and Rapturous to try to resurrect them and do some objective shenanigans. Scarbrand I still think is just so important right now, carving up Thunderhammer, Stormshield, Terminators like it's his job.
Also just trapping people in combat and preventing them from shooting your sad little demons off the board.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Guard are their own beast. I have no idea how to approach an Astro Militarum matchup. But everything else
probably involves trapping them in combat.
It probably involves trapping them in combat with Scarbrand. So definitely starting there with some fiends for speed, and hopefully I can pull some magic out of that.
Yeah.
Luke is all right for $5. How to stop heavy tank guard from destroying Salamander Marines? Is it hiding half the army off the board, or is there a better strategy?
Well, going first always helps.
I actually
shooting them first.
think you could reserve half of your army.
You can.
And then come out with a lot of outflanking eradicators or things of that nature, whatever it kind of got cheap and effective in Space Marines. That's what I mean, your generic points coming down, just apply your good strats to it, you'll end up with a decent army. Strategic reserves plus shooting, I should say, is a great counter to guard, because their 12-inch no deep strike aura is not too effective if you come in and shoot 24, or even 30. And then if you beta strike them, you put a lot less emphasis on I have to go first to win this game.
Yeah. I am a little worried about them just 12-inch screening out enough of the sides of the board that you can't come in and shoot, but at least it forces them to do it. Your early turns need to be pick up the troops so your reserves can come in and beta strike the tanks.
You've got to set up some scenario, and this is the true for any type of reserve strategy, which is a lot more viable now, where your opponent can spread the board really effectively in the first 2 turns before your stuff comes in and make your coming in miserable. That's where your stuff that you actually deploy has to be able to answer all of that very quickly.
I think this also brings up something that, as we were talking about, demons can use into guard, which is the fact that, oh, wait, they do the 12-inch no deep strike. Yeah, that's terrible.
They sure do.
Yeah, never mind. I was going to say you can't really screen them out and you get to do your thing, and then they do screen you out.
They sure do.
Yeah.
Ricky Chow, who's been a subscriber for 1 month, thank you. Can you put Imperial Fists to S tier real quick to screenshot? Yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah, you have 5 seconds.
There's your screenshot.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hope you found the button on your phone, champ. All right.
Appreciate your support.
And then something, when finishing up with Tau, right? Something that Rusty Shackleford mentions here is that Tau had some rough matchups in the top of the meta at the end. Not actually Nids. Nids is actually, Tau is Nids' worst matchup. Like, pretty definitively. But Harlequins and T-Suns both didn't let you play your game, which was rough.
Yeah.
Whereas the top of the meta might be brutal and shooting and whatnot, but at least it lets you play your game of shooting them to death, which is much better.
Yeah. Speaking of T-Suns, they are an army which didn't really change at all on the surface level, but they definitely took some nerfs. So Armor of Contempt, toss that out. Wrath of Magnus, toss that out. So your passive secondary game plan versus anybody who brought a Psyker, that's a gone. Which part of why Thousand Suns were so oppressive is because they had these virtually unshootable Terminators and 45 points of secondaries just sitting right there because you brought a Psyker to do your own Warp Ritual, which they would deny every single turn. So that doesn't work. You can now kill the Terminators, still hard, but you can do it.
You can do it. You could do it before it was difficult. Now it's just way easier, and that's something.
The Terminators are going to have to participate with you, which is why it was so challenging. Like this, Armor of Contempt plus All's Dust was its own challenge, but getting a hit on the Terminators was also its own battle because the Terminators don't have to do anything. Thousand Suns sit on 45 secondary points with Banners, Wrath of Magnus, and Psychic Interrogation. That's just not the case anymore. They have to be more proactive, be involved in the game, which will get them killed. They can be killed now. That's all great. And then the other detachment they brought, Flamers, well, that just is not as good. So
it costs 0 CP now, which is super dope.
That helps.
Yeah. But, you just don't get as much out of Flamers as Demons do. Still good stat line, but they're not nearly as like, wow, this army got a lot better for having Flamers in it.
I really think the secondary just vanishing... And
that's a big deal.
That has knocked them down from best army in contention for the game. I would say all the way down to like B tier, honestly.
Yeah, they lost a lot of what was holding them up there. Armor of Contempt and being stupid and durable is now just not really a thing they can do. Yeah, that was a big deal. Like, they would just sit there in the open. You're like, oh, well, I guess I'm a shooting army. I still can't kill you.
They shoot hard. They psychic really well. But I don't think that's enough.
No, and the demon detachment is, like, good. You're going to take it, but it's just not nearly as... It was a crutch, and it's, got the tips on off. So you're, like, stumbling over.
Yeah. Thousand Suns are a very skillful army, and if you played it the right time, the right meta, really, really well... monstrous, but the meta's moved on. No longer the right time, no longer the right meta, and they got nerfed. So
yes, I think they did fall down somewhere. Again, it's not super important. I think they're behind
Demon CSM, be Blood Angels. Like, it's not super important, but there's a lot.
I think Blood Angels are still fairly decent. But yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Again, anything in A and B can compete, although this is question mark. Whatever. Moving on.
Yeah.
Something I want to point out is that Kelly Hosing used my term "slow Harlequins," which is what I want to make the list called. The Black Templars Impulsors. I want everyone to call it slow Harlequins. It's catching on. It's catching on.
You know what else will be catching on one day? My Space Wolf saga. I promise one day
That's right. You'll do it.
Eventually put that pelt back on. Space Wolves got a lot better as well. Of course, everyone loves that Space Marines just across the board went down a lot of points and free upgrades and all that. Space Wolves really made out like bandits with the free upgrades. Did their secondaries change at all?
To be honest, I don't know.
Okay. Well,
but they do get the free pack leader, or not free pack leader, but the pack leader has free war gear. Mm-hmm. So the Terminator pack leader that you can just jam onto every unit, I believe it's 35. It costs slightly more than the other Terminators. Gets free Thunderhammer, Storm Shield, Cyclone, Missile Launcher, and every unit can just just have one slotted in. It kind of functionally gives a lot of the units in the army Armor of Contempt, because every single one has a Storm Shield Terminator in cover in the front of it.
That also shoots.
That also shoots missiles. Very annoying to deal with. Also, free war gear, or the free heavy weapons on Longfangs is really good, because they get 5 heavy weapons per squad instead of 4. Yeah. That's also quite nice. The Space Wolves look very good, and they also made Thunderwolf Cav a reasonable price point.
Yeah, 35. Much like I wish my Blood Crushers were.
Yes, 35 points a model, but they went down 5, and then they also got a free Lightning Claw, free Storm Shield. So they also functionally still have Armor of Contempt, because if you got like a Storm Shield, you didn't benefit from it before, but you had Armor of Contempt, and now you do have a Storm Shield, so it's functionally the same. That unit at 35 points per model with a Lightning Claw and a Storm Shield is a lot of pain. They advance in charge. Good unit. So
they also have amazing fight phase control with the 6-inch heroics and the fight last relics and spells they can take. Right now, fight phase is not super relevant to most of the dominating factions, so not the right time and the place in the meta, unfortunately. I think all in all, they ended up kind of like Blood Angels.
Oh, I think they ended up better than Blood Angels. The pack leader spam is like real.
All right, well, bring them up.
Yep.
Right, bring them up.
I think they're.
You think they're A tier?
Oh, I think they're A tier. I think they're definitely better than Salamanders.
Space Marine life. Yeah, that's fair.
They get a lot of free stuff.
Yeah, Space Wolves saga continues. All right, now someone who maybe
Rip.
didn't get better.
Rip.
Tyranids.
So I cry a single tear every day, Nick.
What happened to Tyranids? They got their overrun nerf, which is a large part of their actual strategy and how they approach the game, because it allowed you to do hit and run tactics, kill units without committing resources. Really powerful on Flyrants. Now it only works on core, so screw you, Flyrant. Then they also have to pay for Spore Mines, so that element of their army just really not worth it anymore, like Biovores and Sporocysts, that kind of thing. And then they took a lot of points nerfs. Like Zoanthropes went from 40 to 70.
50 to 70, but yeah.
50, yeah. And then the Warriors 35 to, is it 50, 55 now?
Well, it depends on the war gear. I think their base cost stayed the same, but all of their war gear became like 5 points, 10 points, which they were free before, which is yikes. I mean, I don't know I'm sure John can tell you the ins and outs of exactly what points got changed, but it was rough. They got hit hard.
His Kraken army went up 400 something points.
Yeah, and also lost 2 key interactions that the army was, let's be honest, abusing.
I don't know what the new Tyranids will look like. I don't know if new Tyranids are going to be competitively viable. That is a question that John is eagerly trying to figure the answer to out. But honestly, right now, I am honestly thinking they are Death Guard level. Maybe the bottom of B, and we should break
No. Here's what's going to happen. Boom. Yeah,
happened.
I was waiting for the thing to kick.
It did happen.
I was waiting.
It did happen.
I was waiting for it.
Death Guard.
Yeah, yeah. Tyranids are just better than Death Guard.
That's true.
Yeah. Their secondaries are, as Chad is pointing out, are also quite bad. Their secondaries don't make up for it.
They tabled their opponents to win the games before.
And now they just have a lot less stuff.
Now they're going to be trying not to get tabled and also struggling to score points. This is a terrible place to find yourself.
It's not good. They took the dreaded triple nerf.
Well, you know what? They've been top of the heap for pretty much the entire 2022 year. So screw them.
Yeah, that's basically where I'd put it, is like, wow, when they came out, they were super busted, and GW finally hit them with the nerf hammer hard enough. They hit them way harder than Harlequins. Like, at first I was like, wow, Harlequins changed to a 5-up, dead faction. Then I played and I was like, no, they're not. But Tyranids seem real, in rough shape. All
right, now that Tyranids have entered the mix, I think you've won me over. I think Sisters and down can just come down to C tier.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm feeling.
Yeah. Ripperoni and cheese.
I feel a lot more comfortable with that. I could see like some of this stuff.
Let me get that Admech go down and not. Oh no, Admech can stay. Can Admech stay?
Oh wait, no. Yeah.
You skipped Admech and moved to Fist.
I think they're like best to see. I don't know. This is theoretical because they went from like
this whole tier list is theoretical
to us. Yeah, I mean we'll release a tier list later on after we've had a chance to let these cook and had a chance to actually play with all these armies. But first glance, I think let's put Admech up in like bottom of B tier. Let's call it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. So then we've got Ultramarines. They're the generic good boys of the world. They live in tactical doctrine is their whole shtick, which is not the doctrine you want to abuse, but still not a bad one. They love all the points decreases all over the place. Marnie's Calgar notably went down a lot too. What do you think about these guys?
I think that they have one serious problem about wanting to stay in tactical doctrine, and that is that they love being in tactical doctrine with heavy weapons. And The secondary Codex Warfare is just not about that. Like, they ignore the hit penalty. They ignore the hit penalty and they can fall back. I forget exactly what it is. I think it's just they ignore the hit penalty when they use heavy weapons in Tactical Doctrine. And that ain't it, Chief. Like, you don't get 2 points per kill like you do if you stay in Dev. I think if you take a lot of heavy weapons in Ultramarines, I think you stay in Devastator Doctrine and you're just sad that you don't have a trait.
Yeah, I think you can use Ultramarines to still do really well. You're not playing the best Space Marines that you possibly could be, but I certainly don't think they're the worst. Ultramarines were able to compete, not against every faction, but against a lot of factions if you played your butt off in the previous Codex. I think they only got strictly better. I think they're similar in power to like Admech, Thousand Suns in that ratio.
I think they're like roughly in there.
They're ahead of that.
They're better than Imperial Fists and Raven Guard, but yeah, Admech can shoot quite hard.
Yeah.
And Ultramarines, I think, can shoot hard, but just not probably. I don't know. Again, inner tier list rankings, not that important.
And
Let's talk about the leagues.
The leagues of the Botanicals. All right, so this army got nerfed before release. Then it got nerfed again, and I think it's on its third nerf right now.
I think this is the second round.
Okay.
This is the second round of nerfs. The first one was real bad. Lots of points changes.
Yeah.
And then this time they took some points changes. The Land Fortress went up 10. Berserks went to 33 from 30 from originally 22 in the Codex. There's some other nerfs in there. I think Warriors went up 1. Some of the characters may have gone up. I forget. But yeah, they took points nerfs. Don't think they needed it at all. Votann are kind of the perfect mid-table killer.
Votann stat check you so hard. Like, if you're trying to be durable at Votann, they just laugh at you. I literally deep struck my Bellicor against Votann because I was like, I don't want to get Judgment and shot. And then he came in, he hit the charge, his demons, he killed like a unit of the Terminator people, and then insta-dead. Just poof, out of existence, like he was nothing. These things shoot. They also punch if you take the Berserks.
But now they punch at 165 points for 5.
Well, I don't think you take the Berserks.
I don't think anymore you take Berserks, no. Yeah, I think Votann's the perfect mid-table killer, because if you are just looking to put stats on the table, they will check that box all day of the week.
I think they're A tier, but like towards the bottom of A tier. I think all the armies in A tier can really beat them, but they can also crack back. Like, they go first versus Knights, Iron Hands. They're gonna die.
But the Votann secondaries are really not good. Like, they're really bad.
They're an army that tables you first and scores the points later. It's just like that.
I just don't see Votann doing well into a wide variety of these armies.
Like what?
Anything that is fast and scores well, I think just automatically beats Votann if you know what you're doing.
I don't think it's that simple. As someone who just got tabled with GSC against Votann last week, trying the run around score points method. Now GSC got better, Votann got worse. I don't think it's as simple as that statement. I really don't.
Okay. I would put it in B tier. I would put it somewhere around this area rather than up in A. Because a lot of the A tier armies still have things that make them like dynamic, and I don't see the same dynamicism in Votann.
I can get behind that. We can put them at top of B because they're not dynamic. They just do what they do.
Yeah, something like around here, something in this area. Who knows? Somewhere around there. They're good into something.
Your
bad
mouse scrolling is going to give me an aneurysm, Jack. Literally, just don't do that.
Somewhere in this area.
Okay.
All right. Before we go on to the next one, Matto is a $10 super chat. Sisters might be nerfed, but I take slight offense to them being below T-Suns and CSM. Again, oh no, they are just below T-Suns and CSM. Yeah, that sucks, Matto. I'm sorry.
No, appreciate your super chat. Don't appreciate the nerfs, but you know what? I get it. I feel for you. My demons also took a hit, and I love them, and I'm sad about it.
Yeah. All right, let's finish out with White Scars, and then maybe do some rearrangifying.
Last but certainly not least, the good old-fashioned YOLO White Scars. Now, everyone knows that I believe White Scars are the best army in the game, so we might as well just put them right there.
Right, done. Easy. Get your screenshots in now, folks.
I actually do think White Scars are very good. Maybe not S tier, but I think of the Marine chapters, they have all of the tools compared to the rest of them.
Sure, continue, sorry.
They advance and shoot, they fall back and shoot, they fall back and charge, they don't care about rules at all in 40k, and they got the same cheapness that all the other Marine chapters do. Now, their doctrine takes a while to get to, but +1 damage is phenomenal. They're very fast, they're a control-style Space Marine army. I think they're really good. I don't think they're the best of the Space Marines, but I think they're better than Space Wolves, is where I'd put them.
I think they're around the same... Oh, better than Space Wolves?
Better than Space Wolves.
Space Wolves have, like, weird, unique interactions that are putting them up to A in my mind, which is largely the fact that every unit has a free cyclone missile launcher with a Thunderhammer Storm Shield in front of it. In my mind, I think Blood Angels are a bit underranked right now, because they were the first army that we ranked. I think White Scars, in my mind, is around the same as Blood Angels.
I could see that. I think speed is king, and it's the same reason we gave Dark Angels an S-Spy. It's just like if you're fast, you can do a lot, and White Scars are the definition of a dynamic army, being that you can't stop them from doing what they do. I think for those reasons, I want to put them in A. I really do.
Okay, I could see that.
I think they're also better than Salamanders. Like, if we're going to put White Scars...
I think what happened also was that you played against White Scars with a build that doesn't have the ability to really like...
I played against White Scars 10,000 times in this edition.
That's true. That's true. You have played against White Scars a million times. I still think they're good. I think they largely just like spam out Plasma Inceptors.
I think that's not what they do. I think that's what John tried to do, and it still worked, but I don't think that's what they have to do.
That's not what they have to do, but like what kind of build would you be looking for then?
Just like MSU good stuff with like combat character explosions. You're very fast, you hide, you wait till turn 3, then you table somebody. Yeah. Dead air.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I think White Scars and Blood Angels are kind of in the same conversation.
Jack. Why?
I think they're generally in the same conversation. I think that I would personally pull White Scars and Salamanders down to top of B myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remain to be sold on Armor of Contempt versus some free points. I definitely made them better. They were like not good before. Like White Scars were just not a good army before. Mm-hmm. And I think with the points changes but losing Armor of Contempt, they got much better. They didn't benefit from the Dev Doctrine change, and I think that's the biggest one.
I'm okay. Like if we bring White Scars and Salamanders to top of B, it's not really any different. We just move them into an arbitrary letter.
Yeah. I think that and I'd probably move Space Wolves like down to here-ish.
Sure.
And something like that I think I'm fairly comfortable with.
Let's just go through it. So we have Guard, Dark Angels, and Iron Hands as S tier. I think that we all agree on that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Death Watch, Knights, Black Templars, Grey Knights, Orks, Craft Worlds, Tau, Custodes, Harlequins, and Space Wolves all in A. I think Space Wolves should come down, honestly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. If
I can get behind
if we're going to put the variety of Space Marine combat chapters in B, I think they all just do it slightly differently.
It's mostly for the pack leader span.
I get it's just differences.
But yeah, differences.
So then we've got White Scars, Salamanders, Blood Angels,
Space Wolves.
Maybe we should break it up just so it's easier to look at.
Yeah, I mean, again, not getting too much into army, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. And then we've got Drukhari, Necrons, GSC, Votann, Demons, CS7000 Sons. I think that's perfect. Oh, and Ultramarines and Admech. I think that's a fine B tier.
Yeah, it's a fine B tier.
Admech might come down. I don't really understand how great Admech is. But Sieg's always overperforms.
I'm just going to put them up there because they lost their army for now. I could see them coming down, honestly. Going up to B is purely speculative.
Mm-hmm. And then Admech's sisters coming down to C. Are we happy with that?
I'm fine with it, honestly. Too. I just feel so much less threatened by sisters.
Yeah, I don't find sisters very scary right now. So Imperial Fists, Raven Guard, and Tyranids, and then D for Death Guard.
Yeah. Rising Crescendo asks, are Grey Knights really that good? I actually think so. Their secondary scoring is very good. And whereas they lost Armor of Contempt, they actually kind of gained from it because Dread Knights didn't get it in the first place and were kind of unusable after Armor of Contempt came out. And the army kind of opens back up, and I'm really excited for them.
Got a $2 super chat from John Apocalypse. Where'd you rank some Tau Seps and see some more bands? We didn't go through all the different legions and Tau Seps. We did it for Space Marines because they got their different codexes, and everyone loves Space Marines. For us to do every legion and every chapter in one big tier list would probably take the entire day. So maybe we'll do different legions and different seps and etc. in various different tier lists. We do these every single Tuesday, so there's plenty of Tuesdays left to come. Overall, I think I'm pretty happy though.
Yeah, I think the meta is looking. I mean, the boogeymen for sure. There's boogeymen up there at the top: Guard, Dark Angels, and Iron Hands. Those are the boogeymen. But outside of them, the meta is looking pretty balanced, like pretty okay.
I think we're in the same spot that we often find ourselves upon new releases and game changes, where the game looks really, really healthy in the A and B tier. A couple armies could use some love in C tier. Rip Death Guard.
Yeah,
and then,
RIP.
And then S tier is always just these 1 to 2 to 3 factions, which are just a tier above everybody else, hence the tiers. And it's like they define the entire what is viable in the game because they are the best. Yep. And it sucks. But, it's only 3 armies. Luckily, they all try to do the same thing and that they just shoot you. So it's one problem to solve for, not 3.
Yeah.
So
yeah, unlike the old meta where you had 3 different armies doing
Harlequins, Tau, Tyranids, totally different.
No, Harlequins, Tyranids, and T-Sons.
Depends which meta we're talking about.
Yes, fair enough.
We got Stephen Horowitz, who's a member for 11 months. Double of Forcer, Tau, and Crisis suits as troops in the new Tau meta. Looking forward to it with custom steps, so Crisis count as 3 models. That's awesome. Yeah, Crisis suits as troops is really exciting. Being OBSEC with those enforcers, it's really cool. Love to see your Tau ideas. And then we've got Camp 101. Love the Templar love. Y'all both looking sexy. Hi, Marshall Sherwin. Thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate you and your support.
Absolutely. I know you're going to go hog wild with the Black Templars again, as you used to.
Absolutely. And then we've got Heinrich Thompson, 45... I want to say it's Danish Krone, but I really have no idea. Ravenwing again, Death on the Wind, Codex Warfare, but what's last secondary?
Death on the Wind disappeared. Death on the Wind no longer exists as a secondary, unfortunately.
R.I.P.
But it's Codex Warfare, Oaths of Moment, and like banners probably, or more likely Shock Tactics.
Honestly, table them. Who cares?
Well, those 3 secondaries are very good.
Yeah,
Oaths, Shock Tactics, and Codex Warfare.
Oh, all right, everyone. Thanks so much for your support in this endeavor. We've ranked all the different factions in the game. It's been awesome. It's been a blast. We love you. If you want to follow us in our journeys and learning what these factions do, how they work, and all that, please do so in our State of the Faction series, which is available in the War Room. You can access it right now with the link below for 50% off your first month. Join our community. You can also start a 3-day free trial on our website, theartofwar40k.com. There's links all down right below there. We're doing all these battle reports, a lot of these armies and ideas, Iron Hands, Astra Militarum, these best armies in the game, and all the different ways your factions can play. We're putting it on the table for you in the Worm, so you don't want to miss out to that. And, if you're not sold on subscribing just yet, again, you can try it out for free. If you're new here, we do this all the time. Tier List Tuesday. We'll be back. Please leave a comment telling us how handsome we are. We love it. Let us know in the comments what you thought of our tier list. If you disagreed, if you agreed, what you're excited to try. We love hearing those ideas. Like the video, subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep producing this content for you, and our ability to do so is entirely contingent on your support for us. So thank you for letting us do what we love. And one more super chat to round it off. Dead Clown, $5. Third Ed returning tourney player here. I'm interested in Tau. Despite the nerf, I like Crisis mobile gun platforms. Is that still viable? Take 3 hounds for compulsory memes?
Crisis, I think, are still viable. You're just not happy to take them as much because they cost so much, but they do a job the rest of the army doesn't do. And you can combine one unit that just strike and fades all game to never die, and with a bunch of Riptides that also do their version of strike and fade. They move 2d6 after they shoot to not die, or they get the 5-up feel no pain to actually just exist. That build, I think, could be very, very good. I think you replace the planes. You can replace the planes with either planes, you keep them, or you take a Crisis brick of 5 guys with multi-trackers, target locks, and double airburst frag projectors. And that unit will solve any random nonsense outside of your line of sight and shoot them to death. I think you take 0 troops, which is a little unfortunate, but I think that's what you do. And you just take fast attack, and you take the triple hounds. That build, I think, will work out pretty well, but we need to work on it. And I will be working on it, and you would see the results in our Discord or on stream when Mr. Richard Siegler puts his builds on stream.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Check out the Worm and link below, and we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.